My Marvel superhero girlfriend, welcome back, brave explorers of impossible worlds. We are excited to have you here to continue this odyssey together. Before we continue, everything you'll hear is pure fiction, so please don't try to replicate combat techniques at home. This wonderful story and all its rights belong to its brilliant original author. We are only the messengers of entertainment. Want another dose of adventure? Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a single chapter, and if you can't wait, our Patreon has exclusive surprises you'll love. Chapter 401, The War of Extraordinary Women. The last two items taken as trophies were the Wakanda Palace and the Wakanda Black Panther statue. The former represented Wakanda's authority, the latter, its totem. Both were forged from vast quantities of vibranium. At that moment, the sun was setting, its glow dyeing the sky blood red. God King Nian stood atop the Wakanda Vibranium Palace, controlling it while also taking the Wakanda Vibranium Black Panther statue with him, heading out of Wakanda. Gone, all gone. Countless Wakandans were stunned, completely dumbfounded. Why don't you just move all of Wakanda? The Wakandan nobles were so frustrated they nearly vomited blood. That was Wakanda's ancient heritage. It's over. The Queen of Wakanda breathed a sigh of relief, her tense body relaxing as she neared collapse. Mother, are you alright? Princess Shuri of Wakanda stepped forward and supported her mother. I'm fine. The Queen of Wakanda shook her head. As long as your brother is alive and the people of Wakanda are unharmed, that's all that matters. In her view, this was the best possible outcome. That day, many could see a magnificent palace and a colossal statue of Black Panther flying out from Wakanda, Africa. Everything declared that Wakanda's defeat was a fact. This day was destined to go down in history. The so-called Silver God single-handedly declared war and, within half a day, penetrated the Wakanda capital, defeating even the extraordinary technology and the indigenous gods. Hundreds of nations observing the battle via satellite and inbound were silent. Wakanda's fall meant that the rules and agreements they had established no longer bound the Silver God. Now everyone knew this was a ruthless individual, reaching the pinnacle of both strength and character. He acted without hesitation, acting on his own initiative. He was neither a hero nor a villain. He was simply the Silver God. After this battle, the Silver God, already a world-renowned figure, became a star, surpassing even the Avengers and the Justice League in prestige. Superheroes are generally viewed as mere vigilantes. Superman's title of God on Earth is limited to the metropolis. No one in the world has ever reached such prominence. It's safe to say that the Silver God is creating a legend, a modern legend. At this moment, after God King Nian moved his spoils from Wakanda, within the Wakanda capital, separated by a dimensional wall resembling glass, within a mirror dimension, two female figures, one large and one small, stood there. Together with the Wakandans, they watched as God King Nian's figure vanished from the horizon. Wonder Woman Diana Prince and Scarlet Maid Wanda. Unbeknownst to them, from the moment Nian, in God King mode, set foot in Wakanda, Diana and Wanda were already in Wakanda's mirror dimension. Nian certainly wasn't fighting alone. If anything went wrong, Diana and Wanda would be ready to intervene and ensure everything was resolved. Therefore, from the outset, this was a battle Wakanda was doomed to lose. Wanda, do you think there's something wrong with what Nian did? Diana, her star-like eyes gleaming with wisdom, gazed across the mirror dimension, watching the agonizing wailing of Wakanda outside. The girl in a red maid dress shook her head gently, her words soft and childish, yet her tone unwaveringly firm. I don't dwell on that. I only know that as long as it's done by the young master, it's right. Anyone who opposes the young master is a bad person. It doesn't matter what happens. Wanda spoke calmly, without any apparent emotion, her pale red eyes like noble, pure rubies. She cared only about Nian, the people around him, and her own brother. This time, Wakanda and Nian were at odds. Therefore, from the outset, Wanda had no sympathy for Wakanda. If Nian gave the order, she would clear Wakanda out without hesitation, like cleaning up a piece of kitchen trash. Diana fell silent. She had wanted to take this opportunity to comfort Wanda, but it seemed unnecessary. Diana naturally sided with Nian for no apparent reason. And this time, while Nian suppressed Wakanda, he spared no civilians. Diana knew Nian was also considering his own feelings. Wanda. This is over. Let's go, Diana said. Okay, Miss Diana. Wanda nodded gently, not even putting on the ring, and casually opened a 2-meter-high portal in front of her. The two of them stepped through the dimensional portal and disappeared into the Wakanda mirror. Elemental space. The vast universe. Where did you get so much vibranium? Stero looked at the floating vibranium mountain, vibranium palace, and vibranium colossus. Even Stero, who had experienced space travel before, was astonished by the sheer amount of high-level strategic resources. These are unimportant. Find a place to store them first. God King Nian waved his hand, taking advantage of the remaining time in God King mode to tinker with a dimensional ring. The next moment, Nian appeared at the Destiny Alliance headquarters just as a portal opened in the adjacent corridor, revealing two familiar figures. And Nian called out, "Tired, eh?" Diana stepped forward, brushing Nian's damp bangs with her fingers. "Just a warm-up." Nian acted relaxed. His God King mode was already powerful, and it was the latter half of the war, so the Black Panther goddess had warmed him up. "Young master," Wanda bowed with impeccable grace. Nian instinctively reached out to touch his head, and Wanda immediately narrowed her eyes, her expression of comfort and joy like a young emperor. By the way, and about the Black Panther goddess. Nian was about to tell her about what happened to the Panther goddess. But then, a strange noise erupted from somewhere within the palace of the Destiny Alliance headquarters, shaking the building slightly. Clearly, there were others in the palace besides them. Quite a few. Oh, could it be? Nian froze, a sense of foreboding welling up within him. Horizontal ellipsis. At this moment, inside a room in the palace, white spider silk and webs clung to the air, creating a scene resembling a serpentine cave. A green magnetic field jolted metal objects into motion, sending cutlery and ornaments flying and fruit knives gleaming with a cold gleam. Intoxicatingly red, mellow wine and thick, sweet juices rippled through the air like a tidal wave of water, attacking and defending at the same time. A devastating shockwave, powerful enough to shatter everything, shattering spider webs, metal objects, and even anything condensed in liquid form, shook the Destiny Alliance headquarters. This place had become a miniature, transcendental battlefield. Beneath a resplendent ceiling, atop a luxurious carpet, four figures of both beauty and strength clashed. Chapter 402 Wonder Woman, who is the main wife? You. God King Nian's eyes twitched slightly. By the time he arrived at the scene of the battle, the entire headquarters room was nearly torn apart. Bang! Mara's powerful wave, a mixture of alcohol and beverages, swept through the air, colliding with the invisible shockwaves emanating from Sky's palm. At the same time, Gwen, actively removing her metal jewelry, launched a series of flexible, specially crafted spider silk and webs, attempting to envelop Lorna, who was shrouded in green magnetic energy. Lorna raised her hand, manipulating dozens of metal artifacts to fly forward. The dimensional ring, Gwen's only wrist, was also affected, causing her to fall from the ceiling. Stop. Nian was about to step forward to stop him, but Diana and Wanda behind him were a step ahead of him and moved simultaneously. Tap. Diana reached out with her right hand and snatched Odin's sword from Nian's floating body. Her left hand opened wide, quickly grabbing a golden lasso that had been hidden in the air. Odin's sword slashed down first, targeting no one in the room. A rainbow bridge, as if activated, slashed across the void, teleporting away white spiderwebs and metal artifacts, instantly clearing most of the dangerous flying objects in the room. Diana, finding the perfect moment, threw her lasso of truth, catching Gwen from the air. Lorna was momentarily stunned and didn't continue. Elsewhere, Wanda, a young woman with a Lolita figure, kicked up her black boots, her feet, clad in a maid's dress and white socks, rising with swiftness and grace as she forced her way between Mara and Sky. Be careful. Mara and Sky cried out in unison. After all, the powerful waves and destructive shockwaves still surged between them, creating a small tsunami and earthquake. But then Wanda gently touched her hand, and a strange mirrored light suddenly appeared in the air, isolating the waves from the shockwaves. As if isolated and transported to another world, the powerful aftermath of Mara and Sky's abilities quickly dissipated. Ah, Miss Diana, you're here. Gwen was ensnared by the lasso of truth and brought back to Diana's side. Seeing Diana, she quickly removed her spider cowl, revealing a look of shame. Miss Diana. Lorna surprisingly didn't act overly assertive towards Diana, instead greeting her with a hint of respect. In her heart, Diana had been immensely helpful to her family and was one of the few people worthy of respect. Amazing. Mara and Sky were astonished at how easily Wanda had removed their attacking powers. They hadn't expected the little maid who stayed by Nian's side to possess such remarkable abilities. Upon seeing Diana enter the room, Mara and Sky also calmed down. Former Justice League member, Wonder Woman, Diana Prince. It wasn't just her identity that intimidated her. More importantly, her weight and status in Nian's heart were clearly irreplaceable. I say, why did you suddenly start fighting? Nian breathed a sigh of relief and followed him inside. The few who had fought earlier hadn't thought much of it, but upon seeing Nian, they all glanced at him unhappily. Why the fight? It was all because of someone. Regardless, all the members of the Destiny Alliance had, by chance, gathered together. Mara, the 6th ring, Sky, the 5th ring, Lorna, the 4th ring, Gwen, the 3rd ring, Diana, the 12th ring, and Nian, the 9th ring. Inhumans, mutants, mutated humans, underwater people, gods, and a single mortal. This was the first time the Destiny Alliance had gathered together, albeit a somewhat unusual one. With the appearance of Nian and Diana, the situation had finally been stabilized. However, for two of them, this wasn't a surprising encounter. On the field, Wanda, having just used the mirror space to dispel the aftermath, slowly turned, raising her rosy eyes to gaze at Polaris, the green-haired woman in a men's suit. From the outside, it seemed, the two shared a striking resemblance in their delicate, beautiful features, though their ages differed by 3 or 4 years, their bodies even more dramatically, their youthful and mature forms. However, facing the gaze of the young Wanda, the previously domineering Lorna began to avoid her gaze uncomfortably, even appearing a little flustered. This was the first time Nian had seen Lorna with such an expression, even when she was confessing her feelings. Lorna. Wanda whispered softly, her eyes devoid of any emotion. This was bad. Nian had never anticipated Wanda and Lorna's sudden encounter. He had originally planned to arrange a meeting between Wanda and Lorna at a suitable time and place after the war within Wakanda. Yes, it's me. Lorna's voice was distinctly flustered, with no trace of unbridled enthusiasm. I understand. Wanda nodded gently, saying nothing more, not even glancing at Lorna. Her face remained as calm as ever. Sister. Lorna's heart ached, feeling a sense of loss, and she couldn't help but open her mouth to speak. Now that everyone's here, let's have a meeting. Nian interrupted Lorna. Now is clearly not the right time to recognize her family. Nian hadn't expected that Lorna, who is always calm and composed, would become like a little girl when facing Wanda. Perhaps, the more you want something, the more you fear losing it, even if you never have it. However, this also shows how important Wanda is to Lorna. Nian began to use emotional control. Immediately, Mara, Gwen, and Sky all felt their bodies floating, and their moods suddenly relaxed and cheerful. The atmosphere on the field turned from gloomy to sunny. However, Nian found that he couldn't soothe Lorna and Wanda's emotions. Lorna was immune to psychic abilities because she was wearing a mind necklace, so Nian found it difficult to control her uneasy mood. What surprised Nian was that not only could he not affect Wanda's emotions, he couldn't even sense Wanda's emotions at that moment. Was this the power of Wanda's reality gem? Or was it Wanda's own ability? Wanda's inner emotions, just like her eyes without any ripples, could not reveal anything. Wanda. Nian thought for a moment, and could not help but step forward and hold the blushing girl's cool and fair little hand. What's wrong, Master? Wanda smiled slightly, without any abnormality, and said politely, Master, aren't you going to have a meeting? I'll prepare the conference hall. After that, Wanda bowed slightly, turned around and left the room alone. Nian watched the girl's back as she left. He suddenly realized that the mask Wanda wore on her face and in her heart might be harder than the one worn by Lorna. In contrast to Lorna, she seemed weak but was actually strong. Nian had no way of knowing what was hidden under Wanda's calm appearance and undetectable heart. Chapter 403. The 7th member of the Destiny Alliance. At the Destiny Alliance headquarters, a balcony window opened on one side of the grand conference hall, flooding in with sunlight from an artificial sun. Looking out, one could see the starry sky of the devouring dimension and the natural scenery of the small artificial planet they were currently on. To one side, a large waterfall and rainbow cascaded downward. In the center of the hall sat a round table in the style of an ancient Western world. 10 luxurious chairs were evenly spaced around the table, and most of them were already occupied. There was one man and 6 women. Nian, the only man, sat in the main chair facing away from the balcony. To either side sat Wonder Woman Diana, Spider Woman Gwen, Polaris Lorna, Shockwave Sky, and Undersea Queen Mara. Next to Nian's chair, a crimson maid in a red dress stood demurely. This was the first meeting of the Destiny Alliance since its founding. Each of the women present, both beautiful and capable, their beautiful eyes gleaming with wisdom, pride, a mixture of coolness and passion, or a combination of intelligence and determination, all fixed their gazes on the main chair. Looking at the black-haired boy, who looked barely adult after exiting God King mode, Nian said to the crimson-faced girl beside him, "Wanda, you can take one of the chairs." Polaris Lorna glanced at the empty chair next to her, her face etched with nervousness, her mind clearly twitching as she hesitated to speak. Wanda shook her head without hesitation, crisply replying, "No, I'd like to stand next to the young master." "All right then." Nian sighed inwardly, but didn't force his hand. He glanced at everyone present and said, "Before the meeting begins, I'd like to introduce you to the 7th member of the Destiny Alliance." A 7th. With the exception of Diana and Wanda, who seemed to have known about this already, everyone else was stunned, then turned to gaze at the door to the main conference room. The grand, 4 or 5 meter high door slowly opened, revealing a blonde woman with an angelic face and a model figure. The blonde, dressed in a white-collar business suit, exuded intellectual elegance. A polite, sweet smile graced her face, and she entered, shuffling gracefully in high heels, like a secretary. "Hello everyone, my name is Susan," she introduced with a smile, revealing her white, pearly teeth. She showed no sign of shyness or hostility. She seemed easygoing. However, many members of the Destiny Alliance wore solemn expressions. Another competitor had arrived. Indeed, for many members, the women of the Destiny Alliance were both future allies and formidable competitors. How did that guy get to know so many extraordinary women, all of them stunningly beautiful and sculpted? Many members of the Destiny Alliance glanced at Nian with disapproval. Gwen, too, was slightly upset, thinking that she and Kara hadn't restrained Nian. If things continued like this, there wouldn't be enough for each of them to share a day. Sky recognized Susan's identity instantly. She was clearly the only well-known female hero from the Fantastic Four, the long-established Invisible Woman. Her strength was certainly not to be underestimated. Well, that heroic team should now be called the Fantastic Three. "Susan, sit next to me." Mara waved. She and Susan had known each other on the Grand Air cruise ship, and seeing each other again 3 years later was a pleasant surprise. "Mara, long time no see." Susan couldn't help but smile, sauntering over to the empty chair next to Mara and taking a seat. "Susan." Surprisingly, despite her expression, Lorna still waved and greeted. Susan sat down in the chair, her beautiful eyes widening as she gazed at Lorna, who sat to the side in front of her. "Are you that girl from back then, Nian's sister?" "I'm not his sister, I'm the boss," Lorna corrected unhappily. However, upon realizing Wanda was also present, Lorna immediately subsided, no longer acting like a boss. "You've changed so much," Susan exclaimed. 3 years ago, when they met in Los Angeles, she was a short, underdeveloped girl. Now, she's 5 feet 4 inches tall, with a sexy, perfect figure. Wait, so many people have gathered already? I'm the 7th, the last one. Susan, the Invisible Woman, thought of this, and suddenly felt a surge of discontent. She glanced at Nian, who sat at the main seat. There was a sense of resentment, a sense of "isn't it possible I've accidentally forgotten about her?" It was the same widowhood resentment that had gripped Mara before. Nian pretended not to see Susan's gaze and used emotional control to soothe her. He didn't want to either. Actually, after visiting the underwater empire of Atlantis, Nian had intended to head to Los Angeles, but Wakanda's troubles had delayed him. Fortunately, before heading to Wakanda this morning, Nian had made a quick trip to Los Angeles and successfully abducted the Invisible Woman. Now that everyone's here, let's begin the meeting. Nian placed his hands on the table and got straight to the point. He feared that if he didn't get to the point, something unexpected would happen. At this moment, in Los Angeles, in the main center building, the Fantastic Four's headquarters office, Johnny Thunderbolt, dressed in athletic attire, juggling a basketball in each hand and humming a pop tune, entered the office. He saw a man in his 30s, slightly graying at the temples, sitting on a leather sofa with a look of dejection. Next to him, Ben, a 2-meter-tall, rock-skinned figure, emerged from the room clutching a case of beer. "Reed, what are you doing? You look like someone's lost in love." Johnny tossed the basketball to the floor and glanced around curiously. "Where's my sister?" "She's gone." Mr. Fantastic Reed sighed, his eyes vacant as he placed a blank A4 sheet of paper on the table. Johnny picked it up and saw it was a resignation letter, delicately signed in English by his sister. "My sister ran away." Johnny finally understood the reason for Reed's expression. This was truly a broken heart. A one-sided heartbreak. She still can't forget him. Reed shook his head dejectedly, picked up a bottle of beer from the beer box brought by the stone man, popped the cap with his rubber thumb, and raised his head to drink a lot of beer. "Tonight, we won't go home until we are drunk. Let's drink to forget our sorrows." The stone man put the beer box on the table with great momentum. "I haven't failed in unrequited love, why should I drink with you?" Johnny refused. The stone man glanced at him and said in a hoarse voice, "From now on, there are only 3 of us men left in the Fantastic Four. Your sister belongs to someone else. Do you think you should drink?" Johnny was stunned for a long time, then he gritted his teeth and said, "1 box is not enough, give me 3 more boxes." Chapter 404 The First Meeting of the Destiny Alliance. At the first meeting of the Destiny Alliance, Nian spoke about the previous battle, Cheetah, and the spoils of Wakanda. Vibranium would become the foundational material of the Destiny Alliance, distributed to members from armor and weapons to transportation. Nian also touched upon the existence of the 6 Infinity Stones, the Justice League's expedition to Apocalypse, and the secret of Black Panther and Odin's long-ago alliance against an unknown entity. From the moment the Destiny Alliance was formed, Nian wasn't just facing these challenges alone, he was responsible for the entire Destiny Alliance's operations. They would become a truly integrated team, united in their struggles. Although the Destiny Alliance was newly formed and its members were still relatively unfamiliar with each other, they should be aware of the potential dangers of the outside world. "Leave Barbara, Cheetah, to me," Wonder Woman Diana said, her eyes complex. Nian looked at her and replied, "Auntie, you're too soft-hearted to handle her properly." Diana fell silent. If she truly could have dealt with Barbara, she would have been dealt with decades ago. The lifespan of a demigod is far too long for a human. Consequently, Diana's only true friend is her former self, Barbara. Nian pondered for a moment and said, "Cheetah, I can handle this with you later. However, after she wakes up, you can go talk to her first." "Yes," Diana nodded, agreeing. She had gradually begun letting Nian take over arrangements, no longer treating him as a child in need of protection. "Sky, the Shockwave woman, said calmly, I'll look through the files at SHIELD to see if I can find Odin's whereabouts. As long as he remains in this world, he can't possibly leave no trace." "Okay," Nian pondered for a moment. "I'll have the AI, Shirley, work with you. If you find Odin's whereabouts, don't disturb him and contact me immediately." "No problem," Sky agreed immediately. Finding people was her specialty. Empress Mara raised her radiant white arm. "I'll go back and look through Atlantis' historical documents to see if I can find any reference to the extraordinary events that occurred on Earth long ago. Then I'll leave it to you." Nian nodded. The nation of Atlantis was every bit as ancient as Wakanda. If it hadn't sunk to the bottom of the ocean long ago, how could a tiny nation like Wakanda be considered the foremost extraordinary nation on Earth? "You're welcome. It's my duty," Mara winked. Had she flirted just now? Many members of the Mandate of Heaven were secretly observing, no one allowed to sneak around. Susan tilted her head and asked a sharp question, "Nian, you just mentioned the 6 Infinity Stones. Would anyone want to gather them together and do something dangerous?" The council hall fell silent. That's not ruled out. Nian had considered this question before. After all, a single Infinity Stone could spark interstellar wars. Countless cosmic civilizations have pursued such power since ancient times. Even the Ancient One had warned him not to try to gather all 6. It was one of the most taboo and terrifying things in the universe. But Nian also knew that the more taboo it was, the more people wanted to attempt it. Collecting all 6 Infinity Stones is said to grant all human wishes. This magical power will attract countless alien civilizations. Nian glanced down at the silver necklace around his neck and said, "But even I don't know the location of all 6 stones. In the Destiny Alliance, I guard the Space Stone, Wanda guards the Reality Stone, and Lorna guards the Mind Stone. Also, the Guardians of the New York Temple guard the Time Stone. As for the Soul Stone and the Power Stone, Zinnian paused, but ultimately did not say anything. He knew very well that the Soul Stone was located on a mysterious star at the edge of the universe, beneath the altar in the deep valley. The Red Skull had guarded it for hundreds of years, and obtaining it would require a huge price. The Soul Stone should be safe there, so Zinnian felt no need to mention it. As for the Power Stone, Zinnian truly had no idea where it was. But thinking about it was a bit terrifying. Zinnian himself actually knew the whereabouts of 5 of the 6 gems, effectively holding 4 of them in his possession. Invisible Woman Susan said, "So, going forward, we must keep a closer eye on the Alliance members guarding the gems." This was echoed by the other members of the Destiny, whose gazes inevitably fell on Wanda and Lorna. Huh? Some of the Destiny members were stunned. Initially indifferent, they now sensed a resemblance between Wanda and Lorna. Though their looks, figures, and ages differed, they felt like twin sisters. Strange. Zinnian coughed, changing the subject. "Anything else you'd like to discuss? We must find a way to contact the Justice League, or find a way to reach Apocalypse, so we can provide reinforcements at any time," Spider-Woman Gwen began, her heart etched on Supergirl Kara's safety. "I'll find a way, and I've already got an idea," Zinnian replied. Currently, the Destiny Alliance possesses a whopping 4 spatial mobility abilities: the Space Stone, the Dimensional Portal, the Rainbow Bridge, and the Spaceship Jump. If one method can't reach Apocalypse, what about 3 or 4 combined? Right now, the most crucial thing is to confirm the current location of Supergirl Kara and Apocalypse. He wondered if Odin knew Apocalypse's location. Zinnian mused that once he found Odin, many secrets would surely surface. Let's end this meeting here. We'll discuss again when there's progress. Dismissed. Following Zinnian's announcement, many members of the Destiny Alliance began activating their dimensional rings, transforming into streams of light and returning to their locations outside, where they began implementing the will of the Destiny Alliance through their own abilities and channels. "Lorna, you stay," Zinnian said deliberately. "I'll go see Barbara first." Diana didn't stay either, lingering with the dimensional ring as she left, as if to make room. And so, quickly. In the council hall at Destiny Alliance headquarters, only Zinnian sat in the main seat, Wanda stood beside him, and Lorna, once again fidgeting. "Wanda, go get Pietro," Zinnian suddenly said. "Now." Wanda's face froze, a hint of hesitation evident at this moment. "Right now," Zinnian confirmed. "Yes, young master." Wanda bowed, stepped back, and opened a portal with rotating Mars. Less than half a minute later, Wanda entered with the silver-haired, goggled boy, her twin brother Pietro. "Where is this place?" Pietro asked, bewildered. In the council hall, Lorna's unease intensified at the sight of Pietro. 1 red, 1 silver, and 1 green. Witchcraft, extreme speed, magnetism. The 3, with different hair colors and abilities, finally came together. Zinnian took a deep breath and said seriously, "I think it's time to talk things over." He no longer wanted to hide anything from Wanda, and he also felt that this matter had been a source of worry for Lorna. Instead of tormenting each other, why not take advantage of this moment to clarify things? A secret that had been sealed for over a decade was finally revealed today. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 The Strongest Family, 3 Siblings. Destiny Alliance Headquarters, the Council Hall. Where is this? Pietro, brought here by Wanda, was still confused. Seeing Zinnian sitting in the main seat, he flashed a look of surprise. "Brother, you're here too." Zinnian smiled. "Pietro, long time no see." "No, more like a week." "A week?" Pietro was visibly stunned. It had been 2 weeks since their last dinner at the 5-star hotel, but it hadn't been a week. Zinnian reminded him, "Didn't you go to Sokovia a week ago?" Pietro shuddered, a look of disbelief on his face. He blurted out, "Brother, you were also involved in the Sokovia War." However, realizing Wanda was nearby, Pietro panicked and quickly covered his mouth. Wanda didn't react, remaining silent. This made Pietro feel lucky, but also a little puzzled. Normally, Wanda would have immediately questioned him and reprimanded him. Seeing he couldn't hide it any longer, Pietro could only smile wryly. "Brother, why don't I remember seeing you in Sokovia?" "Really? Think about it," Nian said meaningfully. "I certainly don't remember seeing you." Pietro's words stopped abruptly, as if remembering something. He stared at Nian in disbelief. "Brother, were you wearing a full-body black metal battlesuit back then?" Nian nodded. There was no need to hide it now. "Oh my god." Pietro was completely shocked. This news was incredibly shocking. Not only did it mean that Nian was Magneto, the mysterious man who had saved him, but it also meant that Nian was the Silver God, the mortal god who had recently won worldwide attention. The human god who had just ended the war and single-handedly defeated the otherworldly nation of Wakanda. "Brother, you're incredible." Pietro was immediately filled with excitement. The Silver God. Right now, the hottest topic in his school revolved around him. The mere speculation about his gender alone could spark a school-wide debate. But he hadn't expected the other person to be right next to him, a familiar presence. "That's so cool," Pietro exclaimed. "Declaring war on your own, taking on an entire nation. My identity, you just know it, no need to tell anyone else." Nian waved his hand, feeling a strange sense of social doom. Then he said seriously, "And the abilities my identity confers aren't just my own. They also belong to others, like the one before me." Nian then introduced Pietro to Lorna, who had stayed in the room. "Her name is Lorna. She was there at the Battle of Sokovia. You could say it was Lorna who saved you." Lorna hadn't expected Nian to bring this up so directly, and she nearly jumped out of her chair. "Thank you." Pietro looked at Lorna gratefully, but puzzled. "I don't remember knowing you. Why did you save me?" I. Lorna was speechless. She had always been strong and domineering in everything, but in this case, she completely retreated and avoided. Nian asked Wanda, who had been standing quietly beside him, "Wanda, do you know your relationship with her?" "Classmate, junior high school classmate." Wanda's pale red eyes were devoid of any emotion. "Classmate, just a classmate." Lorna bit her lower lip, her beautiful eyes dimming. "But you and her had already come into contact long before that, but you just didn't know it." Nian continued, "Lorna knew long before you and I met. She often watched you from afar and secretly took care of you twins. When you were young, you were harassed by thugs from the nearby streets, but those thugs soon disappeared. Don't you think it's strange? When you were young, Pietro caused a lot of trouble at school, but those troubles were often solved as big things became small things. Didn't you notice this?" Nian stared into Wanda's ruby eyes. "In the Battle of New York, when I rescued you from the rubble, the two of us were surrounded by mechanical soldiers, and it was she who showed up to help us resolve the crisis, but you were unconscious at the time and knew nothing about these things. After Pietro disappeared, she tried desperately to find him for several months, and as a result, she boarded the Grand Era and entered the villain's conspiracy. Including last time, Sokovia." Nian finished in one breath. "Green hair." Pietro looked at Lorna in surprise. "Who are you?" When he was little, he'd heard classmates tell him about a small, green-haired figure stalking him. He'd initially dismissed it as a scare, but now it all connected. Ever since they were little, there had been this green-haired figure, protecting them like a guardian angel. "Wanda, aren't you curious about who she is?" Nian asked. Wanda's body trembled slightly, her hands clenched, her previous composure gone. "Boss, are you going to keep hiding this?" Nian turned to Lorna. Stop talking." Lorna stood up from her chair and tried to leave the main hall, but was quickly blocked by a flash of silver lightning. It was Pietro. "I don't know who you are," Pietro said in a deep breath. "But I feel an inexplicable familiarity with you." Lorna shuddered slightly. "Yes, actually, no explanation is needed, and no proof is required." Nian said inexplicably, "You will know for yourselves who the other party is." The petite Wanda stepped forward, coming closer, standing face to face with Pietro and Lorna, forming a triangle. Buzz! The moment the three of them stood together, a green mist of light emerged from Lorna, a silver light emanated from Pietro, and a crimson spread from Wanda. Magnetic field power, extreme speed, the illusion of chaos, three completely different forces, at this moment, subtly connected. It was natural. Nian looked at this bizarre scene, not surprised, but rather, it seemed natural. After all, the three of them shared the same blood. "Are you our sister?" Pietro's eyes widened, staring at Lorna in surprise. Did my father cheat on me? Xenian's brow furrowed. This kid had quick reflexes, but his brain was also quite sophisticated. No, I'm younger than you, Lorna shook her head. But my biological father is indeed Django Maximoff. Lorna finally summoned the courage to speak. It turned out that over a decade ago, Django Maximoff had fallen in love with a woman, Lorna's mother. However, Lorna's mother later became terminally ill, and the two chose to part ways amicably. Lorna's mother later discovered she was pregnant. Later, Django Maximoff started a family and gave birth to twins, Wanda and Pietro. Lorna, Wanda, and Pietro, 3 half-siblings, were also the strongest family bloodline on Earth. Chapter 406 Wanda becomes a witch. In the main conference room, 3 strange lights converged, 1 silver, 1 red, and 1 green. A secret that had lasted for over a decade was revealed. On the field, Pietro, with the appearance of a rebellious teenager, Wanda, with the figure of a petite young woman, and Lorna, with the features of a mature woman, were actually half-siblings. Furthermore, Pietro, seemingly the most unstable, was actually the oldest and biologically the older brother of the others. And Lorna, seemingly the most mature and experienced, was actually 6 months younger than the twins, Wanda and Pietro. However, because girls develop faster than boys, Lorna appeared slightly older than Pietro. As for Wanda, due to 3 years of growth stagnation, she now appeared the youngest, but was actually the second oldest and Lorna's older sister. This relationship, while seemingly complex, was actually quite simple. Xenian was filled with emotion. He wondered what genes Django Maximoff had, that his bloodline had spawned Lorna, Wanda, and Pietro, each endowed with a different, exceptionally powerful personality. That's magnetic field control, extreme speed, and the illusion of chaos, whose specific abilities are still unknown. What a fertility! Nian called the father of the 3 siblings, whom he had never met, the most powerful genetically modified human on Earth. You're my sister. Quicksilver Pietro was stunned. One sister was enough for him, and now there was another. I have my own life now, and you have yours. It's fine now, just know that, don't worry about me. Lorna waved her hand casually, as if she didn't care whether the twins accepted her or not. At this moment, Wanda suddenly stepped forward and threw herself into Lorna's arms like a child. Lorna's tall body froze. So that's how it is. You're my sister. Wanda hugged Lorna and whispered, when I first saw you in junior high 3 years ago, I felt you were familiar and kind. I felt we were meant to study and live together. Wanda, sister. Lorna's bewildered hands slowly dropped to embrace Wanda's petite body. Tears welled up in her eyes, streaming down her face like pearls falling from a string. She hadn't cried in a long, long time. Pietro scratched his head, chuckling. Nian quietly left the main meeting room, giving the 3 siblings enough space to recognize each other. He rubbed the dimension ring with his fingers. Nian returned to his villa outside Washington. In the living room, Aunt Diana was drinking coffee with Aunt Leopard Barbara, who was sitting in a chair, but the chair was also tied to the lasso of truth. However, Barbara, who had regained consciousness, had apparently forgotten her previous battle with Nian in Wakanda. She only remembered swallowing a piece of heart-shaped grass and passing out there. Nian and Diana concluded that the Black Panther goddess and Barbara were likely still together, but the Black Panther goddess was unwilling or unable to come out. Thus, their attempt to contact the Black Panther goddess was temporarily blocked. Nian could only place his hopes on Odin. He hoped Odin was still alive and on Earth. Nian recalled meeting Odin in the park 3 years before his death. At that time, Odin mentioned that he had 3 years left to live. So, Odin might still be alive, or he might not be. That evening, the Prince family hosted a dinner with the 3 mutant siblings who had recognized each other. Wanda, now considered a member of the Prince family, made this a special family gathering. The feast was sumptuous and harmonious. Wanda, Lorna, and Pietro were like a family who had always lived together, enjoying themselves. Pietro, despite his seemingly unruly nature, actually loved his sister dearly. Wanda was a caring person. Lorna, too, lost her overbearing temper in front of the twins, revealing a softer side. Xenian took the opportunity to use his emotional control to sense that both Lorna and Pietro were in good spirits, clearly delighted by their reunion. However, since he couldn't sense Wanda's inner emotions, Xenian couldn't gauge her overall feelings. But from the banquet, It seemed Wanda and Lorna got along well, reminiscent of their best friend days 3 years ago. Everything seemed to be moving in a positive direction. The next morning, Nian was finishing Wanda's breakfast when he received crucial information. Odin's whereabouts had been found. Sky, working with the AI Shirley, had located someone resembling Odin. "Wanda, I'm going out. You don't have to make lunch," Nian said, hurriedly changing into his shoes, his magic levitation cloak automatically flying towards him. "Yes, young master," the crimson-hued maid replied sweetly. Diana and Barbara were in the devouring dimension. After Nian left with his space necklace, Wanda was left alone in the Washington villa. As usual, Wanda set to work, clearing the dishes and cleaning the house with a meticulous, almost achingly skilled dexterity. After sweeping every area of the villa, the Crimson Girl arrived at Nian's room, closing the door to the empty, tidy room. Turning her petite body, a portal suddenly opened. Wanda's face remained calm as she stepped through the portal and left home. On the other side of the world, in a mirrored dimension, the scene was remarkably similar to New York City. The streets, the scenery, and even the public facilities were recreated in a one-to-one scale, resembling a real New York City. However, it was completely deserted. Not even a human, not even a living thing. The entire world was utterly silent. Suddenly, a portal formed by the spinning sparks appeared on the deserted modern street. Ta-da! Black boots, a gothic dress, a silver necklace, a red hair tie. The Crimson Girl gracefully stepped into this world. The moment she entered the mirrored world, her once calm, gentle, and noble demeanor was instantly inverted. Chaos, disorder, power, and enchantment. If before she had been a noble maid, now she was a witch. A true witch in every sense of the word. Buzz! The necklace hanging from the girl's snow-white neck erupted with a blood-red glow, radiating crimson light through the thin maid's blouse. Wanda ignored it, her ruby-red eyes unchanged as she walked into an alley. Pausing at the end of the alley, Wanda stooped and picked up a thick brick from the trash can. Brushing off the dust, she revealed an ancient tome with a thick black cover. Perhaps even Nian hadn't imagined it. This forbidden ancient magic book, transported from the basement by the rainbow bridge she had slashed, had been lost here in the mirrored space. The deserted mirrored space was silent. Wanda held the ancient book in her hand. Her tender white hands raised it without hesitation and opened the dark book directly. Chapter 407 The Truth About This Universe. Scandinavian, Western Scandinavia, Norway. The sky was overcast, sunless, and the sea breeze was pleasant. A red, top-of-the-line convertible sped out of town, arriving at a cliff overlooking the sea. Lush grass carpeted the cliffs, and the blue sea and grass were a breathtaking sight. A white-haired young man in a baseball cap climbed out of the passenger seat. He looked up, his bright eyes revealing a simple old man standing on the cliff edge not far away. "Do you want me to come with you?" asked a woman in the driver's seat of the convertible, wearing a tank top, jeans, a white sun hat, and stylish sunglasses. "No, you can go back," the white-haired young man replied with a shake of his head. The sexy woman behind the supercar unbuckled her seatbelt and exited the car. She brushed the dark blonde hair from her ear with a silver-ringed finger, lowered her head slightly, and offered a rosy, soft kiss. Then, with a cold, expressionless face, she returned to the red convertible. "Let's go." The sexy woman waved, stepped on the accelerator, and the convertible sped away. "That's really..." Nian wiped the red from his lips. He knew Sky was worried about him, so he had triggered the familial medium to channel his shockwave ability. However, Nian had already made preparations, entering the devouring dimension and borrowing abilities from Aunt Diana. So, he was now superimposing shockwaves and human abilities on top of his demigod power. Although they were only two abilities, they were both extremely powerful, especially shockwave, an extreme superpower designed for attack and destruction. This was also the first time Nian had combined shockwave with another ability. Fortunately, after fully adapting to his demigod abilities, they had developed a certain stability. Nian felt that he could still fully control the new mode of this combination. Nian felt the subtle changes in his body as he stepped on the grass toward the cliff ahead. As he approached, standing on the cliff's edge, facing the sea with his back to him, the old man spoke directly, as if foreseeing his arrival. "You're here. 3 years, old sir," Nian said with a calm smile, approaching the old man. The elderly man had frosty white hair, his face marked by the vicissitudes of time, and a golden eye patch over his right eye. Dressed in a long-sleeved shirt and white casual pants, he looked like any other elderly man. Perhaps it would be hard for anyone on Earth to imagine. The ordinary, one-eyed man before him was Odin, the god king of Norse mythology. Odin's penetrating, single eye gazed at Nian. "You always surprise me. 3 years ago, even I was wrong, thinking you were headed for death. What a shame. Death can't hold me back." Nian shrugged, his mind darting to the image of a gothic woman holding a small black umbrella. "Very well," Odin nodded, bluntly saying, "my time is running out. If you have any questions, just ask directly." Now came the point. Nian took a deep breath and asked, "I understand that 10,000 years ago, you helped Earth's ancient supernatural forces block the alien army from Apocalypse. So, do you know the exact location of Apocalypse?" "Apocalypse," Odin muttered, then asked, "How big do you think this universe is?" "As big as the 9 realms." Nian blinked. He knew that the 9 realms was the collective name given to the current world by Odin's divine realm civilization. Odin shook his head and said solemnly, "The 9 realms are simply the central region of the universe, an interstellar region with a high probability of nurturing civilizations and races. Earth and the Milky Way are naturally within the 9 realms. But beyond the 9 realms, there are countless interstellar regions that are difficult to nurture and are chaotic and disorderly. If the relatively stable region of the universe where the 9 realms are located is considered a ping-pong ball, then our entire universe is nearly the size of a basketball. It's so big." Nian had suspected it, but now that Odin had confirmed it, he was still a little surprised. A single Milky Way galaxy was enough for Nian and Death, traveling to a different advanced civilization every day for 3 years. And this Milky Way wasn't even divided into a single realm. And the 9 realms were merely the core of this universe. The entire universe was the size of a dozen or even dozens of 9 realms. So, Apocalypse, Nian's eyes gleamed. Odin nodded, "That's right. Apocalypse isn't within the 9 realms, but is infinitely close to the edge of the universe." Nian suddenly understood. This was also why Apocalypse was so far away, even the most advanced spacecraft had difficulty reaching it. Why? Nian's expression was solemn, and he had a new question. How could such a powerful and advanced civilization like Apocalypse not be in the core cosmic region where civilizations would be born, but in such a disordered area on the edge? "Isn't the answer obvious?" Odin said calmly. "Apocalypse." Nian was silent for a moment, then came to a shocking answer. "Isn't it a native civilization of our universe?" "Yes," Odin nodded. Apocalypse's civilization, technology, life, and even the entire planet were directly relocated from the multidimensional universe. It was indeed so. Nian narrowed his eyes. So, the Apocalypse Mother Box had truly been a dimensionality reduction attack on Earth. Odin said, "I know the approximate location of Apocalypse, but it's limited to the Rainbow Bridge within the 9 realms and can't be reached." "That's good." Nian breathed a sigh of relief. Knowing the enemy's location would at least allow him to take the next step. However, since you know the location of Apocalypse and that it's an invading civilization, why haven't you tried to eliminate them? Nian suddenly asked. Since Odin considered himself the master of the 9 realms, it was impossible for him not to know the threat Apocalypse posed to the current universe. "The reason is simple," Odin said calmly. "Before Earth was attacked by Apocalypse, years earlier, I suffered a near-fatal injury. To this day, I haven't fully recovered, so naturally, I'm incapable of expeditions." "Was it the battle with the Black Panther goddess?" Nian asked immediately. "It seems you've met her and learned something." Odin wasn't surprised. Sadness welled in his eyes as he admitted, it was indeed that war, and not just her. There were also many powerful beings under the stars, but unfortunately, many perished in it. "Who are they? What kind of existence did you fight back then?" Nian asked bluntly. Odin was silent. He looked ahead at the gloomy sky and deep blue sea, and slowly said, "They call themselves the Celestials." Chapter 408, The Division of World Warfare, must read. The Celestials, it sounds like a team organization. Nian muttered, as if remembering something, "By the way, I once saw a planet called Ego in the Milky Way galaxy. It claimed to be a celestial clan and was pursuing eternity." "Ego? He's not a celestial." Odin shook his head and said, "The Celestials are the creators of most of the life in this universe, including the ancient humans on Earth. They themselves possess eternity. That ego should also be one of the experimental creations of the Celestials. Experimental. Nian was stunned. Odin nodded and explained, millions of years ago, the Celestials came to Earth and used it as an experimental field. They left interfaces in human genes, causing genetic instability. Because of this genetic instability, as the human race develops, some individuals occasionally undergo incredible mutations. Is this the origin of the poor relying on mutations? Nian asked in surprise. What exactly do they want to study? Maybe life, maybe the laws of nature, or maybe just for fun. Only they know the details. Odin's face was expressionless, and he said calmly, it's like raising a ranch. When the cattle and sheep in the ranch are mature, what will you do as a shepherd in this area? A chill ran down Nian's spine, and he continued, slaughter. Yes, slaughter, Odin nodded. When humans on Earth reach a certain age, the Celestials will descend and harvest the Earth's life, ushering in a reboot, just like the extinction of the dinosaurs before. Experimentation, harvesting, rebooting, research. This conclusion was so terrifying. Nian was a little unable to calm down, but fortunately he had control over his emotions and was able to maintain absolute rationality. According to Odin, the Celestials essentially held all of humanity captive. To prevent the Celestials from restarting Earth, I joined forces with many others and participated in that war. Clearly, the brutality of that war was beyond anyone's imagination. Old Odin sighed. Even at the time, with my peak strength, equipment, and condition, I narrowly escaped death. As one of the few survivors, I suffered serious injuries that remain incurable. How strong were you then? Nian wanted to confirm this. Knowing Odin's peak strength, one could infer the strength of the Celestials. Odin didn't answer, but instead stared at him with his single eye. How do you categorize strength? Indeed, without a standardized criterion for strength, it's impossible to express one's own strength specifically. Nian paused, then said, in my opinion, the existence of this universe can be divided into 4 levels. Yes, tell me about it, Odin nodded calmly. Nian stated his own concept of the power system. There are 4 levels, namely, single planet, multi-planet, single universe, and multiverse. Each level can be further divided into lower, middle, upper, and peak levels. For example, on our Earth, the representative hero Iron Man, his strength can be regarded as the peak level of a single planet, enough to crush most of the extraordinary beings on this planet. As for the Flash and the Hulk, they can be ranked at the upper middle level of a multi-planet. Even if they leave Earth and are in other galaxy civilizations, they can still crush most of the extraordinary strongmen. Steppenwolf, I rank it at the lower level of a single universe, enough to dominate countless planetary civilizations. Then, Superman from Krypton on our Earth. His strength can be determined to be the upper middle level of a single universe. In our universe, most creatures find it difficult to compete with him. As for the goddess of death, whom I met on the Grand Air cruise ship, I rank her at the peak level of a single universe. Nian paused, then concluded, existences like Dormammu should be at the multiverse level. Since I haven't encountered many multiverse beings, I can't make any inferences. Using the concept of regional dominance as a basis for categorizing power is quite interesting. A flicker of approval crossed Odin's eyes. Without sufficient vision, such a system wouldn't be possible. After all, once it involved beings beyond the multiverse, it was terrifying enough. It's true that you can make this distinction, but it's too general and rough. Let me help you improve a few theories on this basis. Odin raised a finger and said calmly, first of all, in our universe, the strongest is the one at the peak level of a single universe. You don't need to consider the so-called potential enemies at the multiverse level. Wait? Nian opened his eyes wide, but enemies in the multiverse do exist. There are indeed strong people in the multiverse, and there are quite a few. But that doesn't mean that they can exert their true strength in our universe. Odin said firmly, otherwise, our universe would have been occupied and swallowed by the other side long ago. Nian had a flash of inspiration, recalling the previous situation against Dormammu, and couldn't help but say, could it be that the existence of the multiverse, entering our universe, will have any restrictions? That's inevitable. Odin nodded, they can't enter our universe directly with their original bodies. They can only inherit power, project clones, and gradually occupy our world through assimilation and invasion. He continued, but whether it's inherited power or clones, they can't possess the full strength of their original bodies. At best, they can only reach the upper limit of this universe's strength, which is what you call the peak level of a single universe. So, as long as you stay in this universe, you'll only have to face hostile beings at the peak level of a single universe. I understand. Xinian's eyes brightened. This was good news for him. Xinian looked at Odin and said, "So, your peak combat power back then was also at the peak level of a single universe." Odin held up a second finger. That brings me to my second point. Even beings at the peak level of a single universe have differences, sometimes to the point of crushing one another. For example, if two special forces soldiers with the same physique and skills, one fully armed and fully ammunition, the other holding a knife, the outcome would be quickly determined. Indeed, Xinian agreed, instantly understanding Odin's meaning. For people of the same strength level, the quality of their weapons becomes extremely important. For example, in the past, Aunt Diana's physical abilities weren't much stronger than Barbara, the cheetah, but Aunt Diana was blessed with a full body of Greek artifacts, enough to hold her down and beat her. This is also why the Infinity Stones and cosmic artifacts are so frantically sought after by all major civilizations, Odin said without reservation. At my peak, my personal strength completely reached the peak level of a single universe, as you say. On top of that, I possessed a killing artifact powerful enough to rival the 6 Infinity Stones, wore a destructive armor capable of withstanding attacks below the peak level of a single universe, and possess other artifacts and inherited powers. Back then, even if a clone from the so-called multiverse came in, I would have dared to attack and crush him. At this point, Odin's aged and decayed body radiated a bloody courage and sharpness. Long ago, Odin was unrivaled in this universe. I was invincible. So he's not invincible. Xinian was astonished. Had old Odin ever been so powerful? Invincible. Odin sneered. I thought so too, but I was completely crushed by those guys. My armor was ruined, my body was completely battered, and I nearly died. Are they that strong? Xinian frowned. One, I could certainly defeat, but unfortunately, they were outnumbered. Odin shook his head, unwilling to dwell on the shameful past. Chapter 409 Death of God King Odin. First, the strongest in this world are those at the pinnacle of a single universe. Second, there's a huge gap between the strongest at the pinnacle of a single universe. Xinian digested the 2 theoretical points Odin had just added, his eyes brightening. Besides weapons, are there other differences between beings at the pinnacle of a single universe? Odin looked at Xinian with increasing approval, and slowly said, "Indeed, there are also rules and domains." Rules, domains. Xinian's eyes gleamed. Odin said, "This is complicated to explain specifically. Let me give you an example. First, the rules. The goddess of death you mentioned earlier is of this type. She controls the rules of death in our universe. So even if she's at the pinnacle of a single universe, as long as she's within this universe, nothing can truly destroy her unless she and the entire universe are destroyed. Second, the domain. The Asgard realm is, so to speak, my domain. As long as I stand in Asgard, I can draw upon the infinite power of all of Asgard. Within Asgard, I'm practically invincible. This is an extension of the rules. Unless Asgard is destroyed, as the Lord of Asgard, I cannot be defeated within Asgard." Odin finished calmly. Rules, domain. Xinian muttered to himself in amazement. He recalled the death shackles the goddess of death had placed on him 3 years ago. Those were also the power of the rules of death. So even after entering superpowered mode, he couldn't escape death. Xinian thought of something else and asked curiously, "Wait a minute, since you possess limitless power as long as you're within Asgard, why didn't you intervene the last time the Dark Elves invaded the Divine Realm?" It was his fusion with his Ent, Prince, that indirectly saved the Divine Realm from destruction. Like I said, I've been injured, and I haven't recovered. Odin paused, his single eye deep, and continued, "Also, I ceased to be the Lord of Asgard 10,000 years ago." "You're not the Lord of Asgard." Xinian was stunned. This insider information was too shocking. As the God King of Asgard, Odin had actually ceased to be the Lord of Asgard? Then who is the Lord of Asgard? Thor. Xinian frowned, then quickly realized that if Thor was the Lord of Asgard, he wouldn't have been able to brutally assault the enemy on Asgard before. Not him. Odin shook his head, also unwilling to mention it. "But you'll soon find out who she is." Xinian wanted to say something else. Odin extended his finger, and a faint white light glimmered between Xinian's eyebrows. "I've already told you everything you want to know. This is the system where Apocalypse resides." A vast map of the starry sky appeared in Xinian's mind, with a message marked on a region at the edge. You should leave. I have something to tell my child. Odin ignored him, his single, deep eye continuing to gaze out at the sea ahead, as if responding to his words. Nian looked back and saw sparks swirling across the grass. A circular portal opened not far behind him. A muscular blond man and a handsome, devilishly charming young man hurried out of the portal. Behind them followed a middle-aged gentleman dressed in a blue cape and strange robes. Supreme Sorcerer. The middle-aged gentleman, seeing Nian at the edge of the cliff, addressed him in surprise. Supreme Mage. Thor and Loki, the god of evil, were stunned by the words, staring at the black-haired youth standing beside their father with bewildered expressions. They had already sensed the strangeness and power of the man who claimed to be the guardian of the New York Temple, but they hadn't expected him to call a young boy the Sorcerer Supreme. Of course. Neither of them knew of Nian's many past identities, otherwise his attitude wouldn't have been the same. Hello, Stephen Strange, Nian casually greeted. Why are you here? Strange glanced at the two gods from the Asgard nearby and replied, they came to Earth in New York. I brought them here to prevent them from causing trouble. Like I said, we're just looking for someone, Thor explained helplessly. Then, unable to conceal his excitement, he led his brother Loki to the edge of the cliff. Father. Old Odin, goodbye then, Nian said to Odin, then stepped away, leaving Odin and the two gods some space. Goodbye, Prince. Odin nodded calmly, not looking back, standing still. Nian walked towards Strange with a brisk pace, passing Thor and Loki. As they passed each other, Thor and Loki instinctively stiffened. A chill ran down their spines, Loki in particular, feeling a dull pain in his chest. Instinctively, Loki shrank back and touched his chest, but the strange sensation quickly faded. Thor's brow furrowed, his heart tightening as he gripped a black umbrella in his right hand. The two brothers from the divine realm were facing a formidable enemy. Nian, seemingly unperturbed, approached Strange. Looking at him, fully clad in his cloak and mage uniform, Nian teased, it seems you've already gotten into character, guardian of the New York Temple. Strange shrugged and smiled wryly, a little bit. As guardian of the temple and constantly learning magic, Strange's appearance and demeanor increasingly resembled that of a true, extraordinary mage. However, the burden he shouldered was immensely heavy, and Strange only felt a slight sense of relief when he was with Nian. Strange suddenly seemed to remember something and said, oh, right. Master Wen told me last time that the Darkhold is still missing. Do you know where it is? The Darkhold. Nian's expression was odd. He had forgotten the book himself, having left it last time after using the Rainbow Bridge to deal with Dormammu. Nian thought for a moment and said, it should be somewhere in the mirror dimension. You and Wang should look for it in New York. No problem, Strange agreed. But then, Nian and Strange seemed to sense something and looked toward the cliff edge ahead. It was obvious that Odin and the Asgardian brothers had just exchanged a few words when their bodies suddenly shifted from solid to translucent, and then from translucent to utter nothingness. The god King Odin, transformed into beams of white energy, dissipated over the Norwegian cliffs. No, father. Thor cried out, unable to contain his emotions. The evil god Loki also pursed his lips tightly, a look of disbelief on his face. Nothing lasts forever, Strange whispered. Nian felt a strange feeling in his heart. He himself possessed eternal life, but those around him did not. Was he destined to witness the passing of many familiar faces in the future? Chapter 410 I Like You, Nian Punch. Odin, the king of the gods in Norse mythology, met his end on the edge of a Norse cliff. Many myths seemed inevitably heading for decline. After the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme, another mighty figure who had protected Earth since time immemorial, passed away. Nian could sense the passing of an era. Odin transformed into beams of light and vanished into the sky. A gloomy sky rumbled with thunder. On the grassy cliffs overlooking the sea, Thor and Loki, dressed in ordinary clothes, were filled with sorrow. Thor dropped to the ground, clenching his left fist and hammering it hard. He cried with sorrow and anger, Loki, if you hadn't banished my father to Earth, this wouldn't have happened. This is your fault. Thor, it's no use blaming me. Loki's lips trembled as he forcibly suppressed his grief. Loki turned and looked at the young man not far away. That guy was with my father the whole time. He must know something. He felt the need to vent his grief and distract his stepbrother Thor from his anger. Nian remained silent, standing calmly. Strange warned, I advise you not to act rashly. Otherwise, the consequences will be dire. This was the Sorcerer Supreme. Strange naturally didn't know that Nian, at this point, didn't even know a single magical spell. Then, buzz! A brilliant black light suddenly erupted from the side of the cliff. Thor, Loki, and Strange all looked in that direction in shock. From the darkness that tore through space, a beautiful woman, approximately 30, emerged. Her hair, eyes, eyeliner, and even her uniform were all dark, like the color of death. Her voluptuous, mature form lingered with an eerie and mysterious aura. This is. Nian sensed a hint of death from her. Even if it was only a trace, far less intense than the goddess of death, it was still impossible to ignore. Strange's eyes were grim as he whispered, "That woman is terrifying. The seal's broken. That old man is dead, right?" The woman with disheveled black hair smiled in delight. Her pale, bloodless skin gave her a look even more sinister than the evil god. With a hint of relief, she spoke, "I was expecting to see him die before my eyes." "You're Hela." Thor stood up, holding his umbrella, his eyes wide with anger as he stared at the dark-haired woman. "My so-called sister." Odin had just spoken to him about his sister, Hela. The dark-haired woman smiled calmly and said bluntly, "Kneel." "What did you say?" The evil god Loki almost laughed in anger. It was always others who kneeled before him, so why should he kneel before others? His black suit transformed, transforming into the cape uniform of the divine realm. Thor, the god of thunder, erupted with powerful lightning. His ordinary clothes transformed into silver armor, and the black umbrella in his hand reverted to its true form, the Stormbreaker. Hela, unconcerned, declared calmly and domineeringly, "I said kneel down to your queen. And you too." Hela glanced at Strange and Nian, standing nearby. As if sensing something, Hela's gaze settled on Nian, and she uttered a soft whoa. Taking advantage of Hela's momentary distraction, Thor, the god of thunder, launched his attack. The muscles in his right arm bulged, and with a storm and thunder, he hurled his Stormbreaker forward with all his might. Bang! The grass on the cliff was crushed by the powerful wind, unable to lift it. In the next instant, Thor and Loki were stunned. As they stared in disbelief, Hela, still tilting her head to look at Nian, raised her right palm. Her slender, pale fingers easily stopped the Stormbreaker. "Son of Odin, when did you resort to such rubbish?" Hela sneered. With a forceful thrust from her 5 fingers, the Stormbreaker burst into countless cracks, then exploded into a whirlwind nearby. Stormbreaker, crushed. Thor couldn't believe it. It reminded him of the moment Mjolnir was crushed by that person. It was like a replay. Loki was horrified, instantly realizing that he and Thor were no match for Hela. She was the god of trickery, and facing absolute power, there was no way she would choose a head-on confrontation. Just as Loki was about to take Thor with her to escape, Hela's attention shifted away from them. Instead, she headed towards the two on the other side. "Nian, no, Sorcerer Supreme, what do we do now?" Strange asked nervously, seeing Hela approaching. Nian, however, was calmer, even taking the time to ask, "Have you learned any combat spells?" "Yes, but not many." Strange smiled wryly. He had never imagined he would encounter such a formidable foe so soon. He felt that even if he learned every non-forbidden spell, he wouldn't be enough to defeat the woman before him. "Why don't you just stand back?" Nian gave him a sullen glance. "Okay." Strange felt a sudden sense of relief, his blue cape carrying him upwards as he retreated dozens of meters. Hela, graceful and imposing, approached Nian, her beautiful eyes narrowed slightly as she asked with interest, "What's your name?" "Nian Prince." Nian replied calmly, "What can I do for you?" Hela asked meaningfully, "Why do you smell like death?" Nian shuddered. He, too, smelled like death? Was it because of the shackles left within him by the goddess of death? Or because he had died once before, or because of her? A figure holding a small black umbrella surfaced in Nian's mind. "Very well, I like you very much," Hela said forcefully, "come back to Asgard with me. I can give you anything you desire, except the throne." Nian was delighted. Was she trying to support him? He was expensive, wasn't he? "Can I refuse?" "No," Hela said with a calm smile. "No one can refuse me." "I understand." Hela spread her hands, suddenly lunged forward, and unleashed a punch at Hela. Nearby, Thor and Loki, watching this scene, were shocked. Even Stormbreaker had been crushed by the opponent's bare hands. Wasn't that just courting death? Strange, observing this, was also perplexed. Sorcerer Supreme, close combat. Oh, is that your choice? Then I like you even more. Hila's lips curled up in a wicked smile, and she made no attempt to evade. Perhaps she didn't believe Nian could harm her. However, as Nian's clenched right fist approached, Hila felt a sudden chill run down her spine. Not good. Hila's expression changed, her raised lips frozen. She had originally blocked with one hand, but now quickly crossed her arms in front of her. Almost as soon as she completed this move, Nian's seemingly ordinary punch landed simultaneously. Crack! Shocking cracks erupted from the air in front of Hila, shattering space like a mirror. Golden light streamed along the cracks, resembling golden lightning, and shockwaves spread outward. Boom! The Norwegian cliffs, stretching 2 kilometers along the coastline, collapsed under the aftermath of this punch. Chapter 411 God Shock Mode Nian. Crack! It sounded like something exploding. Centered on Nian's right fist, the blow ripped through the cliffs, the grass, the sea, the sky. Shockwaves raged outward like golden lava, as if space itself had been shattered. The cliffs crackled and shattered, and a 2-kilometer-long stretch of coastline collapsed with a roar. Oh my god. Loki froze, frozen in place. Loki! Run! Thor, the god of thunder, reacted with remarkable speed. He grabbed his brother Loki, his body sizzling with lightning, and leaped outward, using the rubble of the collapsing cliff as his force. Bang! They were airborne. Eventually, the aftermath of the shockwave caught up with them. Thor and Loki groaned in pain, plummeting to the pristine inland land. Sorcerer Supreme, what are you guarding? Strange's eyes twitched wildly, and a blue cape, a magical artifact imitating the magical cloak of levitation, carried him high into the air. He quickly formed a hand seal and, stretching his hands outward, a gust of pale golden wind swirled, counteracting the remnant of the spreading shockwave. Even so, that single blow had already destroyed enough. Fortunately, there had been no other humans on the cliff face except for them. Was that young human the one who did this? Loki hurriedly scrambled to his feet. He gazed in astonishment along the nearby fractured tectonic plate. The previously vast, sweeping cliff was gone, replaced by murky waters pouring inward. One punch, a natural disaster. If that punch had landed on him, the mere thought of it filled Loki with dread. Fortunately, he hadn't provoked the other. This is just the beginning. Thor's expression was grave, and he glanced upward. 100 meters above the cliff, a figure with short silver hair, Nian, stood in the air, his eyes dancing with golden divine flames, his red cloak draped over his shoulders fluttering. His body trembled slightly, involuntarily, the backlash of his shockwave power radiating through his body, but it quickly subsided. Nian looked down at the shattered cliff face. The force was beyond his expectations. Clearly, the combined power of shockwave and demigod power had pushed the nature of shockwave to a new level. That wasn't just a punch, but a localized, targeted earthquake. Even if Nian weren't for his ironclad physique, even in his current divine shock mode, he wouldn't have been able to withstand the powerful backlash. This was a move that killed 1,000 enemies while injuring 800 of his own, a pure attack and destruction capability. Did you block that punch? Nian looked down at the surging seawater below. As he watched, a whirlpool suddenly formed on the surface. Bang! A splash of water. Hila burst from the vortex, her hair disheveled and wet, a trickle of blood oozing from the corner of her mouth. Her tights were mostly torn, revealing large patches of pale skin, but her body remained intact. Licking the blood from the corners of her mouth, Hila's body underwent a transformation. She donned a complete black, tight-fitting combat suit, her hair tied up, and donned a dark helmet shaped like demon horns. She exuded a veil of allure and nobility, beautiful and powerful. Hila stood on the air, a darkness and death lingering around her. You're unleashing your ultimate attack right out of the gate? Interesting. This makes me even more impressed by you. Only you are worthy of serving the Queen of Asgard. Hila wasn't angry, but instead, her eyes held a glint of madness and coldness. She stretched out her hands, clenching them, and 2 cold blades appeared in her hands. Ultimate attack? Divine shock mode. Nian raised a brow. The previous attack wasn't really an ultimate attack, but he was still surprised that the opponent had managed to block it at close range. After all, the closer the distance, the greater the power of the shockwave. The punch that shattered the cliff was merely the aftermath of the spillover. The main shockwave had penetrated the opponent's body, causing only minor injuries. Sure enough, it's a monster. Shenzhen Xinian sighed inwardly. Odin had truly left a problem. This Hela's strength was firmly in the top 5 of any enemy he had ever encountered. According to the previous theory of power classification, she was at least mid-level in a single universe. And in Shenzhen mode, Xinian considered her to be, at best, lower level in a single universe. The main issue is that her attacks, which could truly threaten a powerful foe, were too monotonous. He couldn't let them see the full extent of his mode's abilities or the true nature of his abilities. Shenzhen mode, Xinian thought, and immediately moved, flying towards Hela again. Taking the initiative. Hela sneered, feeling that she was the one being underestimated. Hela swung her 2 blades, and in the next instant, darkness swirled around her, flashing with cold light. Hundreds of blades emerged, raining down upon Xinian like a rain of swords. Facing the overwhelming barrage of blades, Xinian didn't even attempt to dodge. He raised his left fist and delivered a powerful punch. Crack! Wherever his fist struck, cracks erupted again, cracks spreading and shockwaves surging, twisting and deflecting all the blades. Xinian continued to fly forward, closing in on Hela. Just in time. Hela swung her black-clad arms violently, and the sharp blades she held vanished. Her speed was so fast that it instantly shortened the distance. Xinian could feel a chill on his skin, his spider sense warning him that if struck by the blades, even a body of steel might not be able to withstand it. Under the control of his emotions, Xinian remained absolutely rational, unwavering, and swung a second punch. Crack! The blades, already reaching for Xinian's neck and chest, were stopped by the punch and the powerful waves generated by it. This man! Hela's eyes flashed with a devilish brilliance, and she clenched the 2 blades tightly in her hands. The blades and fists locked for half a second, until cracks appeared on both blades. There was no reason for her to retreat. With a blank expression, Xinian thrust forward a 3rd time. Each punch was stronger than the last. This was the result of Xinian enduring the internal recoil and becoming more and more skilled. Boom! The double blades in Hela's hands shattered, and her fists, carrying the shockwave, rushed forward, piercing Hela's chest. At this moment, a wicked smile appeared on Hela's lips. Xinian's spider sense suddenly sensed that sharp blades had emerged in the space around him, flashing with cold light and stabbing towards him. A fight to the death? This woman is also cruel. Xinian's eyes brightened, and without stopping his punch, he landed a 3rd punch. Boom! Xinian almost instantly delivered 3 punches without a break. Earthquake clouds formed in the sky, and the wind howled. Cracks appeared in the ground below, and the seabed broke and lifted up with the sea water. At this moment, the whole of Norway was shaken by a violent earthquake. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412 Xinian is getting married. Earthquake, earthquake. The ground in the Norwegian city trembled relentlessly, and locals fled their homes in terror. On a street, a red convertible parked, and a woman with dark blonde hair stepped out of the driver's seat. Has it hit over there yet? Sky raised her gaze, gazing towards the source of the earthquake. It was clearly on the coastal cliffs 7 or 8 kilometers from the town. It was exactly where Xinian had been dropped off. Such powerful tremors and movements were undoubtedly caused by Xinian. He can transmit shockwaves from such a distance. That guy is truly a psycho, Sky muttered to herself, shaking her head. Even if shockwaves were her own power, she couldn't inflict such a powerful shockwave attack. Even if she could, regardless of whether others would be injured, she would surely be seriously injured. At the cliff's original location, all sorts of terrifying natural phenomena appeared in the sky. Sorcerer Supreme, if this continues, Norway will be destroyed. Strange cried out, using his magic to do his utmost to counteract the impact, but it was still difficult to suppress. It's over. As Xinian's 3rd punch landed on Hela in divine shock mode, just before countless blades pierced his flesh, a cloud of blue light erupted from the necklace around his neck. Hela's beautiful eyes widened as she watched the inevitable Xinian vanish before her eyes, dodging every blade. At the same moment, she felt something strange behind her. A fist, charged with shockwaves, swiftly struck her back. Space jump! Hela cried out in shock. Boom! Boom! The third punch to her chest and the fourth to her back sent shockwaves surging through her simultaneously, their combined impact exploding. Hila's body shook violently, and a cloud of blood erupted from her mouth. She plummeted from the air into the churning sea. Boom! The water shot up dozens of meters, forming another underwater vortex. Huh? Nian, in divine shock mode, slowly exhaled, feeling dizzy, her blood churning, and a nauseating urge to vomit. Continuously unleashing full-strength shockwaves, combined with the divine fists, clearly proved too much for even him. Without the protective shield of his Iron Man, achieving this would have been impossible. While his overall combat power in God Shock mode was certainly weak, his physical attacks were undeniably formidable. If the opponent were to play with magic, intrigue, or rules, God Shock mode would be no match for him. It was a shame they didn't grasp this in time. Perhaps even Hila, upon hearing Strange address her as the Sorcerer Supreme, mistakenly believed his strength lay in sorcery, not melee combat. Sorcerer Supreme, is it resolved? Strange asked fearfully, flying forward. Half, Nian replied. Half. Just as Strange was wondering, the underwater vortex below suddenly exploded, sending a disheveled figure flying out. Come again. Strange was startled, only to see Hila clutching her chest with one hand, a cold, sharp blade in the other. Instead of charging at Nian and him, she flew towards Thor and Loki. Loki's face paled with fear. He already knew Hila's terrifying power. To survive those punches, she must be an absolute monster. Loki instinctively shouted, Heimdall, take us back. No. Thor's face paled. But it was too late. As the evil god Loki finished his words, a rainbow bridge descended from the sky, enveloping Thor and Loki. The two gods transformed into streams of light, rushing along the rainbow bridge to the summit of the universe at the end of the sky. Hela, clutching her wounded chest with a cold blade, forced her way through the rainbow bridge's barrier, then vanished into a stream of light as well. This. Strange was stunned. In a flash, Loki, Thor, and Hela, the three siblings from the divine realm, had all fled. Sorcerer Supreme, should we chase them? Strange asked. That's not necessary. Nian shook his head, watching the rainbow bridge disappear before his eyes. Driving them off Earth was already a good thing. And, if his conjecture is correct, Hela is the Lord of Asgard. Returning to Asgard, Hela will be able to draw upon the power of the divine realm, remaining invincible on her home turf. Since Loki had brought Hela back, let them resolve the situation internally. Nian had little affection for Loki, and by not taking action against him this time, he was already doing Odin's honor. Here, I'm counting on you. Nian surveyed the devastated land and sea, patting Strange, who was floating nearby. Nian, this isn't looking good. Strange's eyelids twitched. Keep going, Nian muttered, his magical levitation cloak rising as he soared towards the Norwegian city. Alice, Strange watched Nian's retreating figure, helplessly lifting the magical pendant from his neck with both hands. Shortly after, accompanied by a flash of green light, the water receded, the mud and rocks returned to their original state. As if time were flowing backwards, the cliffs gradually returned to their original state. Nian returned to the Norwegian city to reunite with Sky. Is everything resolved? Sky asked curiously. Everything has just begun, Nian replied slowly. He'd learned so much information from this meeting with Odin that he needed to digest it. But the most urgent priority was Apocalypse. Nian now had the coordinates for Apocalypse. By unlocking the Space Stone's power, he could reach it. Let's go back first. This needs to be a long-term plan. Nian felt he should inform all members of the Destiny Alliance and first find a way to discover Supergirl Kara's location and condition. It was unclear whether the Justice League had reached Apocalypse. Still recovering from his god-shaking state, Nian returned to his villa outside Washington. The first and second floors were silent and deserted. Strange, Nian muttered. The house seemed deserted, a bit desolate. Perhaps his aunt was still in the devouring dimension, but what about Wanda? Just as Nian was thinking this, untying his magic levitation cloak, a circle of sparks appeared on the floor of the second-floor main hall. It was a portal. Realizing this, Nian was already falling. Falling. The magic levitation cloak was put back on Nian's shoulders, allowing him to hover steadily in an unknown area. Where is this place? Before Nian could react, he sensed someone approaching from behind. Instinctively, he raised his hand to strike out, but quickly stopped himself. Because he already knew who the other person was. But before Xinian could say anything, a pair of slender white hands with a scarlet glow reached forward. Xinian's eyes went dark and he lost consciousness. Horizontal ellipsis. He didn't know how long he had been unconscious. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Xinian woke up from the bed, holding his forehead. His mind was dizzy and he smelled alcohol. Was he drunk? Oh right, I was so happy last night that I drank a lot of wine. Xinian muttered to himself, and with difficulty sat up on the old-fashioned bed. He found that he was still holding a certificate tightly in his hand. A marriage certificate. Registrant, Nian Prince. Nian looked down at the brand new marriage certificate in his hand, stunned for a moment, then naturally revealed a beautiful and happy smile. After all, he had registered his marriage yesterday, so it was inevitable that he was happy. Chapter 413 Mr. Nian, Happy Wedding. Donning a smart black suit and combing his hair into a grown-up look, Nian Prince looked at himself in an old-fashioned dressing mirror. He was a handsome, sunny young man with shaggy black hair. He stood a little over 5 feet tall, with a slender and well-proportioned figure, muscular but not overly muscular. He looked to be in his early 20s. Did he look familiar, yet also a little strange? Putting on the well-fitting suit, at first glance, even he barely recognized himself. Nian Prince jokingly said that his impression of his appearance was more lingering on his youth, a period of immaturity in youth. After all, since joining the military a few years ago, he had rarely had the opportunity to look in the mirror. That's right. Nian Prince had been an airman and had even served in World War II. Until last year. After the war ended, Nian retired from the Air Force and proposed to his childhood sweetheart. They moved to their quiet and peaceful town, ready to live a peaceful and trouble-free life. And so, just yesterday, Nian and his childhood sweetheart obtained their marriage certificate locally, becoming a legal couple. Yes, that's exactly what it is, Nian muttered to himself. This was his memory, though it was somehow a little hazy. Maybe it's because I don't want to face war again, Nian thought. Anyway, everything will be fine in the future. Nian changed his clothes and walked out of his room. He could see the hall outside. The small, old wooden space was furnished with sofas, tables, chairs, an iron, and everything else. Everything was both old and new, creating a homey atmosphere. Wait a minute, why do I think these are old? Nian muttered, confused. He recognized it immediately. It was a new iron from Stark Howard's subsidiary, emblazoned with Captain America's shield logo. Oh, right. Captain America had crashed into the sea while flying a Hydra fighter 2 years ago and was still missing. May God bless Captain America, Nian said to himself. The year was autumn, 1946. Horizontal ellipsis. Knock, knock. There was a knock at the door. Nian opened it. Standing outside was a couple in their 40s. The woman had stylish perms, the man had an iron in his mouth, and both were holding gifts. Who are you? Nian didn't recognize them. Ah, we live next door, and we came to wish you a happy wedding. The woman said enthusiastically. My name is Sally, and this is my husband. Hello, I'm Simon, nice to meet you. The man's face was stern, but he offered his hand. Nice to meet you, Nian said, shaking his hand. Sorry, I just moved in a few days ago and haven't had time to visit yet. Come in and have a seat, Nian invited them in. As the couple next door sat down and talked about how much he and his wife looked so in love, Nian blushed. By the way, how did you know we just got married? Nian poured the drinks and suddenly asked curiously. Have you forgotten, Mr. Nian? Mrs. Sally said with a smile. Last night, you got drunk and knocked on doors all over town, showing us your marriage certificate. Really? Nian's mouth twitched. Wasn't that a complete disaster? Sure enough. Immediately, more and more residents arrived, offering gifts and well wishes. Soon, Nian's new house was filled with guests, bustling with activity. Nian bustled around, preparing drinks for them. By the way, Mr. Nian, where's your wife? Mrs. Sally suddenly asked. Her? Nian was startled. He remembered that he hadn't seen her since getting up this morning. Oh, right? I'm married, right? Where's my wife? Nian muttered to himself. Just then, the door opened. A woman in black boots stepped in. Nian paused, and the room fell silent. It was a beautiful and voluptuous woman, wearing a white punk hat that held back her naturally rosy hair. The hat and hair framed her stunning face. Ruby red eyes, a high nose bridge, fair skin, and a small, red-lipped mouth. The crimson-haired woman stood at least 1.7 meters tall, dressed in a fashionable, old-fashioned blouse and skirt. Her figure was voluptuous and captivating, her curves rivaling those of any magazine cover girl. She exuded a mature air, her every move exuding elegance. She carried a basket and a small bag, clearly having just returned from grocery shopping. Seeing so many people in the room, the woman was slightly startled. Though she had stunned everyone, she looked a bit naive. "Madam, congratulations on your wedding," someone shouted, and the room was immediately filled with congratulations, a vibrant and lively atmosphere. The woman's beautiful face flushed, and she stood at the doorway, a bit bewildered. Nian smiled, walked over, and took the gifts from her. He gently embraced her, kissed her cheek, and proudly introduced her to the crowd. "Everyone, this is my wife, Wanda Maximoff. Isn't she beautiful?" "Beautiful," echoed the room. Wanda's ears blushed, but she let Nian hold her, her beautiful eyes and face filled with joy. "I'm sorry for the poor hospitality. Did my husband cause you any trouble?" "No." The crowd laughed and cheered. "Keep an eye on him, and tell him not to drink so much next time. It's inevitable, it's our first marriage, after all." The house was filled with joy. On the evening of the second day after their wedding, Nian and Wanda held a wedding celebration at their new home. Almost all the residents of the small town of Westview had come, and the entire western town was bustling with activity. It wasn't until 10 o'clock that the residents gradually left, leaving behind a message of happy wedding. Late at night. Inside, Wanda pinned her crimson hair with a hairpin. She donned a floral apron, tucked a few wet strands behind her ears, and began to clean the slightly messy living room left by the party. "Let me do it," Nian volunteered, reaching for the rag and grabbing Wanda's hand. "Just sit still." Wanda rolled her eyes at him. "You're only making the mess worse." Nian blinked and sat down on the sofa dejectedly. "Why didn't you tell me so many people came this morning?" Wanda felt a little embarrassed, pouting her bright red lips. "I wasn't prepared at all. I didn't realize it either." Nian shrugged and smiled sincerely. "But even if you weren't prepared, your presence is enough for me to show off." "No." Wanda blushed, like a ripe apple, looking even more adorable. Nian sat on the sofa, feeling content. This was his wife. Childhood sweetheart, only family. Wanda Maximoff. Could anything be more wonderful and happy than this? Chapter 414 Happy Wedding, Nian and Wanda. In Zijing Town, inside a two-story Western-style wooden house, it was late at night, the side curtains drawn, and the main hall was illuminated by a warm yellow light. Sitting on the sofa, Nian watched his wife diligently sweep the table. Her mature, voluptuous figure bent slightly forward, her snow-white neck, adorned with a few wisps of hair, and her hip-hugging dress, revealing an incredibly alluring curve. He couldn't help but move forward and embrace her from behind, his hands cupping her waist and lower abdomen. The touch was soft, and he could smell a faint fragrance. Nian sniffed. Wanda froze slightly, and with a hint of panic, she said, "What are you doing?" "I'm still dirty." Nian felt a sense of déjà vu. How could it be dirty? Nian smiled, reaching for Wanda's earlobe as if savoring a delicious dessert after a banquet. Naturally, he hadn't noticed. As he touched Wanda, his wife's violently trembling eyes flashed a crimson light, but it quickly vanished. Nian could feel the trembling of the beautiful body in his arms. He hadn't expected his childhood sweetheart to be so shy and nervous, even though they were already married. This was adorable. It wasn't like they hadn't done this before. "Okay, I won't tease you anymore. Go clean up." Nian suppressed the burning in his heart. He let go of Wanda, sat back on the sofa, and spread out a newspaper, covering his embarrassment. Wanda nervously adjusted her long skirt, especially the wrinkles at the back of her hips. Her slightly damp right ear was already red, like translucent amber glass. The main hall suddenly fell silent. Wanda glanced at Nian, who had even held the newspaper upside down. After wiping the table and washing her hands, she returned to her room and retrieved a set of men's pajamas. She took a deep breath and gritted her teeth, saying, "Nian, go take a shower. Wait until I'm done." "After I shower?" "Huh?" Nian looked at her in confusion, momentarily unable to react. "You're not sleeping tonight?" Wanda mustered her courage and spoke a complete sentence. "Oh, right. I'll take a shower right away." Zinnian quickly stood up, gathered his clothes, and headed for the bathroom. He waited until the door closed. Outside the main hall, Wanda bit her lower lip, placed her hands on her cheeks, and patted them gently, as if to encourage herself. "If it's Zinnian, then it's fine. After all, we're already married," Wanda muttered to herself, almost as if to herself, a strange crimson glow in her eyes. In the room, Zinnian, dressed in pajamas, leaned back on the bed. He instinctively searched his pockets, but found nothing. After a moment's pause, he picked up a book and began to read. He had casually grabbed a book from the bedside table. It was titled Mutation Theory. It was a science fiction novel. The author's entire premise was that if mutant genes were common in human society, a large number of gifted new humans would emerge. How would these new and old humans get along? This was a serious problem. Interesting, Zinnian nodded. The author, known by the pen name Professor X, had quite a creative mind. An unknown amount of time passed. As Zinnian read, he nearly fell asleep, the novel dropping from his hands. Click. The wooden door of the room opened. He dazedly opened his eyes and looked over to see his wife, Wanda, dressed in the same long-sleeved pajamas. Her still dry crimson hair cascaded gracefully over one shoulder. Her beautiful, rosy face, a dazzling, almost snow-white complexion, was unbuttoned, revealing a striking cleavage at the top and a small belly button at the bottom. She wore pink slippers. Zinnian's sleepiness instantly washed away, and he quickly pulled back the covers and stood up. Wanda was still a little shy and nervous. But Zinnian went to the closet, dug out a hairdryer, patted the edge of the bed, and said, "Sit down." Wanda sat down obediently without hesitation. Zinnian plugged it in and blew out Wanda's damp hair. "It seems like I touched your head like this a long time ago," Zinnian said, caressing her crimson hair as the warm air flowed through her. "Yes." Wanda closed her eyes. "It seems like, not that long ago." Zinnian tilted his head. "When was it?" He couldn't quite remember. Wanda asked softly, "Zinnian, will you blow dry my hair again?" "Of course." Zinnian smiled. "You're my wife. Even if your hair falls out, I'll still help you fix it." "It won't fall out," Wanda said grumpily, a tear sliding down her face and dripping onto her knees. Zinnian meticulously combed the crimson hair, not noticing, and continued, "And this beautiful crimson hair is like a burning flame, like autumn maple leaves. It's our joint property after marriage, and I have an obligation to maintain it." Wanda chuckled, and suddenly asked seriously, "Is it done?" "Almost," Zinnian replied. "Turn off the lights, Zinnian." Wanda's voice no longer trembled, but was filled with peace and happiness. "Okay." Zinnian quickly put the hairdryer away and turned off the lights in the room. Darkness fell. Two slightly rapid and hot breaths came close together, followed by the rustling of clothes. That night in Zijin town, a heavy rainstorm suddenly broke out. Under the powerful impact of the rain, the bright red flower buds outside the yard kept swaying. Until the morning, the rain stopped and the sky cleared. The petals of the flowers outside the yard opened slightly, pitiful, but even more beautiful. Inside, it was not known whether it was rain or morning dew, and it was crystal clear under the sun. Slept until noon the next day. Zinnian finally woke up from the bed. He looked to the side and found that Wanda had already gotten up. What surprised Zinnian was that the bed sheets had been changed. His wife Wanda had a slight obsession with cleanliness and was afraid of dirt, which Zinnian could completely understand. But how did Wanda change the sheets while he was asleep? "Wanda, are you hiding something from me?" Zinnian, still in pajamas, walked out of the room with a serious expression and asked Wanda, who was preparing lunch in the main hall. "What?" Wanda's heart trembled. "You." Zinnian looked at her and couldn't help but laugh. "You used to lie to me about your lack of strength, didn't you? You even needed me to open the bottle caps for you, but you're actually quite strong." Wanda paused for a moment, then nodded. I guess right," Zinnian chuckled, feeling truly genius. Now, outside Westview Town, in the conference hall at the Destiny Alliance headquarters, 6 women, each distinct in style but all incredibly beautiful, sat in chairs besides the vacant chair. "Zinnian's missing," one of the women said. Another responded, "It's been a day and a night, and not only that, Wanda's gone too." When Zinnian and I parted, he simply said he was going home first and then holding a meeting. Someone brought up this crucial point. A female figure rose from her chair, slammed the table, and sneered, "You can still sit still, but I can't. Go ahead and find him. Use your connections and your means. Even if it means turning the whole world upside down." Not long after, one female figure after another transformed into streams of light, disappearing into the vast conference hall. The world was about to fall into chaos. Chapter 415, The Opening of the World. Destroying copies in various places. Nian had disappeared. The entire Destiny Alliance was in turmoil, and members began searching the world for him. No one knew that the world would be completely overturned and rewritten in the next few days. In the Divine Realm, Asgard. The Rainbow Bridge, having crossed billions of galaxies, returned, and beneath a dazzling light, only a single figure emerged. How could it be possible? "You are." Heldam, the gatekeeper clad in golden armor and wielding a silver sword, opened his eyes wide in shock. It wasn't Thor, the god of thunder, or Loki, the evil god. Instead, it was a beautiful and alluring black-haired woman. "It feels so good to be home," the woman muttered. She had been clutching her chest as if wounded, but the moment she set foot on Asgardian soil, her injuries healed with visible speed. Furthermore, the woman's already incredibly powerful aura began to multiply exponentially, a terrifying aura emanating outward enough to shock the entire Asgard. Heldam's fear grew even more intense. Though his hands still tightly grasped the sword, his body trembled uncontrollably. The moment she set foot on Asgard, the power of the entire star region was at her disposal. Hela regained her former arrogance and dignity, her head held high as she addressed the gatekeeper, Heldam, with a calm voice, "Kneel. God's domain dungeon, boss, Hela, Lord of God's domain." In an unknown cosmic location, a Kryptonian fighter plane soared through the lonely darkness of space. Inside the cockpit, a tall man in a batsuit sat in the co-pilot seat. Next to him sat a steel man, his body largely robotic. In the still spacious rear cabin, there were a young human in a crimson lightning suit, a 2-meter-tall green man in a blue cape, a purple-haired woman dressed as a sexy magician wielding a staff, and a man and woman wearing matching S-shaped bodysuits. 7 in total. These were the Justice League's expeditionary team: Superman, Supergirl, Batman, Zatanna, the Flash, Cyborg, and Martian Manhunter. But at this moment, the cabin was completely silent. No one spoke, the atmosphere tense and tense. Finally, it was Barry Allen, the Flash, who spoke first, breaking the silence. "Well, we've been traveling for almost a month. Can we make it to Apocalypse?" "It's certainly taking a while," Zatanna exhaled slowly. Many people felt a sense of frustration. This wasn't just a little long, it was too long. Their spirit and courage were almost worn away by the journey. "Everyone, cheer up," said the Martian Manhunter, who looked taller and stronger than Superman, in a gentle voice. "Trust Cyborg. He will lead us to our destination. I've always believed in Cyborg. Reaching Apocalypse is only a matter of time." Superman Clark said solemnly, "My only concern is if Apocalypse invades Earth while we're on our way to Apocalypse. That would be a real problem." "I'm worried about that, too." Supergirl Karen nodded slightly, her beautiful eyebrows furrowing slightly. Perhaps even Spider-Woman Gwen hadn't realized that while she was worried about Supergirl, she was also worried about her. Don't underestimate the short duration of an interstellar journey. For Apocalypse, or many other alien civilizations with cutting-edge motherbox technology, reaching Earth requires only a thought in a split second. "We've come this far, there's no way we'll give up halfway," Batman Bruce Wayne finally said. 3 more days. If we can't reach it, we'll return to Earth." Because the expedition was constantly adjusting its course, it took many detours. If it had followed the known route, it would have taken less than 2 weeks to return to Earth. "Everyone, sit tight. We're about to make another jump." Cyborg Victor Stone's expression was serious. He extended his mechanized right hand, and his palm quickly merged with a control platform. The Kryptonian spaceship merged with him, becoming one. The spaceship jumped. At first, the Justice League members were curious about this, but now they were used to it. After all, they had made hundreds of jumps in the past month. As the Kryptonian spaceship jolted slightly, the cosmic landscape outside suddenly blurred, and the galaxies disappeared into streaks of light. When the spaceship completed its jump, it appeared out of thin air in another galaxy countless light years away. Everyone on the Kryptonian spaceship was stunned. Outside the spaceship, the universe was pitch black, devoid of any visible galaxies or starlight, a cosmic forbidden zone for life. Only in the space ahead hovered a crimson planet. The round orb wasn't a natural planet, but rather a magnified mechanical energy core, clearly the product of a technological civilization. No way. Inside the cabin of the Kryptonian spaceship, the hearts of all the Justice League members pounded, a mixture of nervousness and excitement coursing through their hearts. Batman asked gravely, "Cyborg, is this the place?" "Yes, it is." Cyborg replied forcefully. His body had been transformed by the mother boxes. How could he possibly mistake a mother box transformed planet? Confirmed. All the Justice League members clenched their fists. After traversing countless interstellar spaces and spending nearly a month, they finally reached their destination. Apocalypse Dungeon, Boss, Darkseid. Earth, New York, Stark Industries. Tony Stark was about to make out with Pepper Potts, dressed in her secretary's uniform, when a rotating portal rustled open in the main hall of his office. A gentleman wearing a blue cape and a wizard's uniform stepped out and began, "Tony Stark, I need the help of the Avengers." "Who are you?" Tony Stark glanced at him in surprise. "I'm Doctor Strange, or Stephen Strange." Strange's face was filled with solemnity. If the Sorcerer Supreme, Nian, hadn't been found, he wouldn't have immediately turned to the Avengers for help. "Are you here to perform a show?" "A magic show." Tony Stark snapped his fingers. "Stark, listen, Earth is facing a great and severe test." Before Strange could finish his words, the necklace around his neck suddenly flashed green. He looked out the floor-to-ceiling window of his office. Tony Stark and his wife, Pepper Potts, also looked out the window. A silver-gray donut-shaped flying object, kilometers long and wide, descended from the sky towards the center of New York City. Buzz! The giant flying object hovered near the ground, its engines heat alone lifting countless objects from the New York streets, instantly plunging the city into chaos. "They're coming," Strange said gravely, reaching out to tuck the time stone pendant into his clothes. New York Dungeon, Boss, Thanos. Chapter 416 The Fourth World Destroying Copy. New Jersey, a remote area. Surrounded by wilderness, a straight gravel road. A green four-wheel drive pickup truck drove at a steady speed, kicking up clouds of dust. "Oh la 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 la, we're going on a trip today." In the driver's seat of the pickup, a woman in clown makeup, her dyed twin ponytail swaying in sync with her high top, curled her lips in an excited and uninhibited smile. While steering with one hand, she reached out the window with her right hand and waved at the wilderness outside. "Honey, it's a rare trip out, so smile a little." As if finding it a bit boring to be alone, Harley Quinn spoke to the person in the passenger seat. Harley Quinn's face and figure were already outstanding, but the red-haired woman in the passenger seat was almost perfect, like a forest elf fallen from grace from a fairy tale. Even her expression and posture were unforced. The red-haired woman, sitting there in her tight green dress, was alluring enough in herself, a natural beauty. Poison Ivy Pamela didn't respond to Harley Quinn's question, her eyes vacant as she gazed at the scenery ahead. Harley Quinn didn't seem to mind. She felt that her friend, free from that boy's interference and having offered to go on a trip yesterday, was already a pleasant surprise for Harley Quinn. Bang! The pickup truck jolted over a hillock. Sitting in the truck's spacious trunk, the adorable, beady-eyed King Shark was tossed about, causing the truck to tremble again. "The map shows a town ahead. Let's go in and resupply," Harley Quinn suggested. A strange glint flashed in Poison Ivy's beautiful eyes, and she nodded. 10 minutes later, the pickup truck stopped on a desolate plain. "Strange. The map clearly shows a town here." "Are you kidding me?" Harley Quinn exclaimed. Poison Ivy simply opened the door and got out. "Pamela." Harley Quinn hurriedly got out and gave chase. Soon, the two reached the edge of the plain. "What's this?" Harley Quinn froze, her beautiful eyes wide open as she gazed ahead. She could see a translucent wall of light at one point in the plain. The light shifted in the sunlight, so subtle that it was impossible to discern unless one looked closely. Buildings could be vaguely seen within. At the edge of the wall, a sign stood. Westview was the name of the town Harley had seen on a map. But as the two watched, the sign inexplicably shifted and changed its name to Westview. "What's going on in there?" Harley Quinn suddenly realized with astonishment that this wasn't a wall of light, but a vast, luminous barrier, stretching from the earth to the sky, encompassing the entire town. "He's in there," Poison Ivy said, perplexed, standing near the wall of light, observing the shifting landscape within him. Harley Quinn paused, then realized that the man was inside. Pamela, so you came out for him. Harley Quinn was hurt, having thought she was truly on a trip. He's not feeling right, Poison Ivy muttered to herself. She and Nian had a special bond, able to sense each other's state and location. Harley Quinn was furious. She gritted her teeth and shouted, "You should know, the closer you get to him, the more you can't leave him." Yes, Poison Ivy nodded calmly. But, since 3 years ago, I've been unable to survive without him. No matter how hard we try to escape, our lives are connected, our fates share. With that, Poison Ivy ignored the dazzling wall of light and stepped directly into it. Damn it. Nian Prince, you're responsible for all this. I'll demand compensation from you. Harley Quinn gritted her teeth and followed him in. The Westview dungeon opened, boss, unknown. Westview. Inside a 2-story cabin. Nian held Wanda in his arms, the two of them nestled intimately on the sofa, watching the black and white TV. Life in the small town was peaceful and tranquil. Time passed quickly. 6 months had passed since they moved in and got married. Nian embraced his wife, Wanda, his hand caressing her visibly bulging belly, his eyes filled with fondness. Not long after their marriage, Wanda became pregnant. Watching her belly grow day by day, Nian felt a mixture of excitement and trepidation, knowing a pivotal turning point in his life was approaching. Wanda lowered her pretty face, resting her head on Nian's shoulder, her own anticipation for the future. Nian gazed upon his wife's body, now more voluptuous and mature than before their wedding, and his hand trailed down her back. Nian, Wanda bit her lip, clasping her hands against his twitching hands. It's okay, I'll be gentle. Nian's heart was already ignited. The taste was sweet. Even though Nian and Wanda had explored every nook and cranny of the cabin for 6 months, they still weren't getting tired of it. Wanda couldn't do anything about it, so she blushed and adjusted her posture. Afterward, Nian and Wanda showered again. By the way, I need to go out. Nian suddenly remembered something and hurriedly changed into a suit. Where are you going? Wanda, also emerging from the bath, looked at him curiously. I'm going to the town administration office, they're hiring some clerks. Nian smiled. It's been 6 months, and it's time I find a job. Otherwise, how will I support you? Be safe. Wanda, still wrapped in a towel, stepped forward and gently tied Nian's tie. Stay home and don't run around, Nian urged, lowering his head for a gentle kiss. Snap. After the door closed, Wanda stood in the deserted house for a while before returning to her room to rummage through her clothes. Finally, as she reached a back corner of the closet. Snap. 2 necklaces were pulled out together, one shimmering blue, the other a dark red, delicately blending together. Gazing at the strange and mysterious light, Wanda's beautiful eyes fluttered, as if she had broken free from some immersion. Then, she clutched the 2 necklaces tightly in her hands. Nian greeted the townspeople along the way, arriving at a 3-story building in the center of town. Nian was about to knock on the door when a woman emerged, nearly running into him. Mom, are you okay? Nian hurriedly supported the woman. I'm fine, the woman shook her head. She bent down and rubbed her high-heeled right foot, apologizing, I was just careless. You're here to apply for the clerk position, aren't you? Nian smiled. He was somewhat surprised to find that the woman had red hair, similar to his wife's, a cool and beautiful face, and a windbreaker wrapped around her graceful, mature figure. Yes, I just finished an interview. The red-haired beauty's eyes met Nian's. Their gazes met, and they both felt a sense of déjà vu, though they couldn't place where they had met. My name is Nian Prince, and I'm getting ready for an interview, Nian said politely. Nice to meet you, the red-haired beauty smiled slightly. My name is Du. She paused, visibly taken aback, before continuing, Pamela, my name is Pamela. Chapter 417, Harley Quinn, Escape from Westview? In Westview Town, at the local grocery store, a bell rang out. The wooden door, signaled by the bell, flung open, and a young woman with twin tails in jeans and a t-shirt entered. She addressed a wheelchair-bound shopkeeper, Lollipops. Lollipops. The shopkeeper was stunned. He'd been running the grocery store for years, and he'd never heard of them. Right, according to the current era, lollipops hadn't been invented yet, the woman muttered to herself, then waved her hand. Then a pack of gum and a pack of cigarettes. No problem, the shopkeeper replied cheerfully. After preparing the merchandise, he gazed at the woman's beautiful, youthful, fair face and asked curiously, "Girl, why haven't I seen you before?" "Oh, according to the story, I'm a hoodlum from the next town," the woman said casually. The story? A hoodlum. The shopkeeper was once again bewildered. 5 cents, right. The woman with twin tails pulled out her purse, watching it automatically switch to old-fashioned bills and coins. She sighed and pulled out a few coins. The shopkeeper, perplexed the entire time, watched her leave, feeling a bit out of touch with the thinking of today's young people. Leaving the grocery store, the woman with twin tails diligently chewed her old, unpalatable gum. She looked up at the town's old-fashioned Western architecture from the 1940s and 1950s, raising an eyebrow in disapproval. Yes, she was Harley Quinn. Not long ago, Harley Quinn and her friend Poison Ivy passed through the light curtain that enveloped the town. The moment they entered the town, everything changed beyond imagination. Westview was actually 1946, not long after the end of World War II. Everyone here, including the locals, believed they were actually living in a western town from the 1940s. More accurately, their memories and perceptions had been tampered with. Not only the locals, but upon entering this fictional, bygone town, everyone's perceptions are secretly altered, automatically adapting to the current era and regional context, taking on the role of the town's characters. Thus, upon entering Westview, Poison Ivy seemed to have transformed into a completely different person. She was portrayed as an outsider from the next town, seeking employment and settling down. And her companion, Harley Quinn, was portrayed as a thug from the next town. Harley looked down at her own attire. Her once modern clothes and belongings had been transformed into the style of a bygone era. But that wasn't the scariest part. Now, Harley Quinn thought back, and she suddenly had a complete memory, a true memory of a naughty girl who had lived in the neighboring town for over 20 years. If she weren't so neurotic, her thinking wasn't quite right to begin with. Harley Quinn would have, like Poison Ivy, forgotten everything that happened before entering the town and assumed the role Westview had given her. Let's find Pamela first. Harley Quinn could vaguely sense that someone was controlling everything in the town behind the scenes. This town is terrifying. We must get Poison Ivy out of here first. Harley Quinn was pondering this when her expression froze as she saw a dark-haired young man in a worn-out suit walking down the road. Is that Nian Prince? At this moment, at the edge of the universe, the Kryptonian ship entered stealth mode, seemingly evaporating from space as it sped towards the planet ahead. As it approached the planet, it became apparent that the entire planet resembled a giant, circular, mechanical warship, its surface dotted with countless engine-like craters, constantly spewing forth blazing, high-temperature flames. This was Apocalypse. Meanwhile, within the cabin of the Kryptonian ship, the 7 members of the Justice League, bound for battle, wore solemn expressions. Everyone has learned a little about Apocalypse since the last step in Wolf Invasion, Batman said calmly. The primary combat force of Apocalypse's legions is a species called the Parademons. They stand 3 meters tall, can fly, possess strength and speed approximately 5 times that of a human, and are fearless of death. Cyborg said sternly, it's important to note that the Mother Box, the culmination of Apocalypse technology, can generate infinite energy, open sonic boom channels, reshape matter, and so on. Last time, it nearly tore Earth apart and reshaped it. That's not the point. The most important thing is the leader of Apocalypse. Superman clenched his fists, his eyes gleaming coldly. Don't worry about the Parademons. Let's go and kill Darkseid. Aware of Darkseid and the threat posed by Apocalypse, this mortal god, the usually benevolent son of Krypton, also betrayed murderous intent. This battle was inevitable sooner or later. There was no point in sitting back and waiting for death. We must take the initiative and carve out a bloody path for our future. This was also the will and purpose of the other members of the Justice League. We will definitely win. Supergirl Kara clenched her fists across her chest. For some reason, a young man's image suddenly flashed through her mind. Failure might not be such a bad outcome, at least she could see him. But then, the Kryptonian ship, in stealth mode, had just entered Apocalypse, and before they could confirm Darkseid's location, a sharp warning suddenly rang out from within the ship's cabin. We've been spotted. A large number of unidentified creatures are approaching us. Cyborg exclaimed in alarm. Everyone was startled. Superman Clark and Supergirl Kara raised their eyes, peering through the air, and saw the creatures approaching the Kryptonian ship. It was a terrifying creature, resembling a demigod, yet even taller and stronger. Its violet body shrouded in a powerful and sinister energy. Its ferocious wings flapped as it swept towards the Kryptonian ship like an overwhelming force. That's it. Superman and Supergirl exchanged a glance, their eyes filled with shock and anger. Within the demigod, they had detected a portion of Doomsday's genetic sequence. Meanwhile, a giant spaceship landed in New York, completely ushering in the extraordinary war on Earth. Chaos reigned in the New York metropolitan area, with screams and sirens wailing one after another. Future Chronicles Corporation headquarters, top floor. Oh, coming for me. Lorna stood up from the sofa and looked outside coldly, as if echoing her words. Bang! The floor-to-ceiling windows on the top floor shattered, and a strange metal spear pierced the air like lightning, piercing Lorna's body fiercely. It was so fast it was impossible to see clearly. Lorna's pale green eyes focused, and the metal spear's speed suddenly slowed until it stopped completely in front of her, unable to move an inch closer. Metal control. But, the next moment. Whoosh! The metal spear suddenly erupted, emitting 3 destructive rays, instantly tearing through the furniture and walls, destroying everything on the top floor. Chapter 418 picked up a clown girl. Boom! Destruction beams blasted through the outer walls and ceiling of the top floor of the Future Chronicle headquarters building. The round bed, sofa, and furniture within were instantly reduced to charred mud and burst into flames. Tramp. 2 alien figures, a man and a woman, fell through the broken French window into the room. Did it work? The male alien, nearly 2 meters tall, had a pale face. He wore black armor that gleamed metallically and wielded a sharp scythe. He looked like a soul reaper from hell. His cold eyes swept inward. The female alien, a slender and sexy figure in silver white tight-fitting armor, picked up the spear from the ground. Probably. Dark Knight Proxima said this, but she was still confident in her sneak attack. Countless powerful beings under the stars had been killed by this strike. This spear was forged for her personally by the Supreme Being, Thanos. Not only could it easily penetrate densely muscled creatures, it could also directly destroy the intelligence center of intelligent mechanical races. It's safe to say, if it hits, no one will survive. General Corvus Glaive said hoarsely, let's look for them. Maybe not even a bone remains. But the Infinity Stones are obviously impossible to destroy. Yet, Proxima Midnight nodded and took a step forward with her gun. With a buzz, countless metal fragments swept towards her. Bang! Proxima Midnight, gun and all, was thrown directly from the top floor window of the building. Dark Knight! General Corvus Glaive shouted, looking forward in shock. The office was in ruins, a sea of fire engulfing it. Crack! A metal statue of a young girl shifted, its vibranium body scratched by the destructive ray from the spear. Lorna Polaris stepped out from behind the statue. At the critical moment, she had moved the vibranium statue to block the ray. You all, damn you. Looking at the destroyed office and the statue of the girl, Lorna's body shrouded in a green magnetic energy that kept flames at bay, her green eyes turning cold. She'd already been feeling down over Nian's disappearance, and had intended to come to the office to search for clues. Now that the office was destroyed, along with a metal statue of the girl she and Nian had created, she'd undoubtedly stepped on a minefield. Hand over the necklace around your neck. Corvus Glaive said hoarsely, raising his scythe. If you want the necklace, trade it for your life, and I might consider it. Lorna sneered, thrusting her hands forward, sending a surge of green magnetic energy surging outward. Whoosh! The flames in the office instantly died, and Corvus Glaive flew backwards out the window, followed by Lorna, whooshing out in pursuit with a fierce and furious rage. Silence fell over the empty office. On the charred floor, the vibranium statue of a young woman stood as usual. 3 scars on its surface, scars strong enough to pierce a machine's intelligence, were healing at a visibly rapid pace. Her once lifeless vibranium eyes flickered for no apparent reason, becoming more lively and animated. Westview. Harley Quinn leaned against a wooden house, chewing gum as she watched the young man enter the 3-story office building. Her expression was odd. She had earlier inquired with the townspeople and quickly learned that a newlywed couple, Nian Prince and Wanda Maximoff, had moved into the town 6 months prior. This was astonishing. Harley could confirm that she had seen Nian in Washington 2 weeks prior, and that he had still been a young man then. So, how did all those 6 months come to be? In this town, the very concept of time is distorted and subverted. Harley Quinn shuddered. Outside, perhaps only a day had passed. And in this town, 6 months, even 10 years, can pass by at the will of the person behind the scenes. Furthermore, Harley spotted her friend Poison Ivy entering the same office building for a clerk position interview as Nian, who had lived in the town for half a year. Sure enough, these two, wherever they go, always end up together, connected by the thread of fate. Harley spit out the gum in her mouth. Now it's easy. Now that both of them have been found, all they have to do is awaken their true selves or get them out of town. That's it, right? Easy, Harley muttered, but the moment she decided to move forward, she inexplicably retracted her steps. What was I thinking of doing here? Harley's eyes suddenly became blank. Looking around, Harley's bewilderment grew even greater. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Her head began to spin, her vision went black, and she fell backwards. One of the unspoken rules of Westview is that anyone who attempts to break the Nian Prince's identity will completely lose themselves. The one who tampered with these rules, Scarlet Witch. After finishing his interview, Nian was walking out of the third-floor office building when he saw a woman with twin ponytails collapsed beside a nearby wooden house. "Mom, are you okay?" Nian hurried over to check on her. She was inebriated and reeked of alcohol. Drunk? Nian examined her face. He didn't remember such a person in town. She must be from outside. For some reason, she felt familiar, just like Pamela he had seen before. Should he just leave her there? Nian hesitated. It would be bad if someone with bad intentions found her, even though he believed that everyone in Westview was a good person. But such a beautiful young woman, drunk and unknown, was undoubtedly a potential culprit for a crime. Nian thought for a moment, and finally carried her petite body on his back. Back at the door. "Honey, please open the door." Nian was carrying the woman with twin ponytails. She wasn't heavy, even light, but it was still inconvenient to open the door with her on his back. However, there was no response from inside the house. Nian froze for a moment, barely holding the woman he was carrying with one hand as he pulled out his key and opened the door. The house was clean and tidy, yet silent, with no sign of his wife, Wanda. Nian's heart tightened. He dumped the woman with the twin tails on the living room sofa and entered the room to check, but still found no sign of his wife. There was a note left on the bedside table. Nian picked it up and breathed a sigh of relief. Wanda had left a message saying she was out to the market. Nian was just catching his breath when he heard a strange noise coming from the living room. He turned around and was stunned. It seemed that the woman with the twin tails he had carried back was in the process of taking off her t-shirt, jeans, and white cotton padded jacket, and throwing them on the sofa nearby. "Mom, please respect yourself." Nian was shocked. He was a married man. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419 Pets, New York Battlefield. Inside the wooden house in Zijing Town. "Madam, please calm down. Don't be impulsive." Startled, Nian hurriedly picked up the woman's clothes from the ground, one by one. He'd barely gotten halfway when a camisole draped around his neck. It seemed as if she'd already taken them off. "This feels much more comfortable now," the woman with the twin ponytails mumbled, fanning herself with her hand as she leaned back on the old-fashioned sofa in Nian's home. She threw one long leg up over the armrest, shamelessly exposing herself, completely treating the sofa like her own bed. Nian clutched the clothes, his mind a blur, forcing his gaze away from the proud, snow-white form. He must have been drunk. Luckily, Wanda was out. Wait, that's not right. Nian suddenly realized, if his wife, Wanda, came back and saw this, he'd never be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Pacific Ocean. And Wanda was pregnant, she couldn't handle the excitement. Nian immediately exploded. "Madam, put your clothes on." He closed his eyes and tucked the clothes into her arms, but he couldn't avoid the soft touch. The woman with the twin ponytails suddenly looked at him, as if regaining some clarity, and inexplicably said, "You can touch me." "I don't want to. I didn't mean to." "Put it on yourself." Nian, without even looking at her, withdrew his hands as if they were burning. But before Nian could withdraw his hands, A hand suddenly grabbed his wrist. Though a young woman, she possessed the strength of a strong man. Nian stumbled and was dragged forward by the woman, accidentally falling onto her body. His left palm, caught in the softness, sank into a massive softness. Nian instantly realized what it was. He instinctively tried to stand up, but two slender, soft rings clasped around his waist. As he rose, he embraced her as well. But Nian felt no joy, but rather a strange anger, even suspecting she was deliberately tricking him. What exactly do you want to do? Don't force me to use force. Nian opened his eyes and glared at the woman angrily. The twin-tailed woman, however, was pleasantly surprised, her beautiful eyes widening. You touched me, and it's really okay. I'm actually still alive. Although Harry had lost herself in the town, her subconscious and instincts remained. She knew she couldn't be touched, and anyone who did was dead. It was a demonic curse. Even she had forgotten the reason. What do you mean? Nian sweat out in Harry's eyes. She was clearly not lying. Suddenly, his gaze slid down, landing on her delicate, snow-white neck. There was a small, black, cat-like mark. Like a drop of ink on a piece of white paper, it was incredibly clear. It evoked a sinister aura of blasphemy and sin. More than anything, Nian sensed a sense of familiarity. More than just a sense of familiarity, it felt as if the mark had been left by him. In the 6 months since settling in the small town, Nian had felt a subtle familiarity many times, but this time, it was more familiar than ever. The familiar and the unfamiliar collided, the unknown and the known conflicted, the future and the past blended into one. Nian froze in his place, feeling as if he had forgotten so much, but for a moment, he couldn't recall what. Then, the twin-tailed woman hanging from his body suddenly giggled, flirting with a flamboyant yet charming smile. I remember who I am. Who are you? Nian looked her in the eye for the first time. I'm your pet, my master. Harley laughed wildly, unsure whether she was conscious or confused. She wrapped her smooth arms around Nian's neck, offering him a sweet, intoxicating kiss, her lips curled freely. Now, in New York, on a street near the Future Chronicle headquarters building. 5 minutes ago, a supernatural battle had occurred here. New Yorkers fled in panic. They were well accustomed to this, and despite their continued fear, they managed to evacuate with relative composure. After all, they've faced the prospect of unknown disasters countless times. Soon, half of the modern streets will be emptied of civilian life, turning into battlefields. On the field, unmanned cars flew up, hurling themselves at one another like hurled stones. Sizzle. These cars, still in midair, were either shattered by the destruction beam or sliced apart by the sharp sides, each met with a powerful explosion. The New York streets were a scene of devastation. A fierce battle ensued between two armed aliens and a green-haired woman, leaving the ground and buildings damaged to varying degrees. Give up. You can't defeat us alone. Corvus Glaive, whistling, cleaved an oncoming bus in two, its front section slicing through it. You're talking too much nonsense. We'll only know if we can defeat you if we try, Polaris Lorna said coldly. As her hands, shrouded in green magnetic energy, clasped together, the bisected bus wreckage in front of her slammed into Corvus Glaive center. Corvus Glaive leaped high, dodging the crushing metal wreckage with incredible speed. Lorna wanted to continue manipulating the metal to pursue the enemy, but suddenly her heart trembled, and she turned around. 3 destructive rays blasted behind her. Polaris's physical condition was only that of an ordinary person, unable to dodge or withstand such an energy attack. At the critical moment, a tramp. The road surface was directly crushed. A tall, nimble female figure descended from the sky, landing directly behind Lorna. Her well-defined left arm raised, blocking the destructive rays with a shield. Who is it? General Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight's expressions changed. A little late, are you okay? Wonder Woman Diana slowly stood up, shield in her left hand, a silver sword in her right, and a golden sword hanging from her waist. Her Amazon armor looked sturdy and noble. Her long white hair flew wildly, and her flawless face was cold. I'm fine. Lorna shook her head, clutching the necklace pendant hanging from her chest. They're after the Infinity Stones. Nian and Wanda's disappearances might be connected to them. We can't let them go. General Corvus and General Corvus were confused, but their expressions remained stern. Before they could speak, whoosh! A strand of spider silk struck Proxima Midnight's spear. Before Proxima Midnight could react, the spear was yanked free by the thread. A female figure in a spider suit clung to the outer wall of a nearby building, grasping the spear with one hand. "Where's Nian?" Spider-Woman Gwen, her usually intellectual and gentle tone now tinged with anger, glaring coldly at the two alien generals. "Oh, so they did it." In a previously deserted part of the street, the air shifted, and a blonde woman emerged. "Susan, you've been here a long time," Gwen exclaimed in surprise. "We just arrived." Invisible Woman Susan blinked, her hands raised with a powerful surge of energy. The battle situation instantly changed from 1 against 2 to 4 against 2. Chapter 420. The strongest villain on Earth appears. On the streets of New York, Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight looked on with utter dismay as they gazed around them at Lorna of Polaris, Wonder Woman, Spider-Woman, and the Invisible Woman. Lorna of Polaris's magnetic field control was already a formidable challenge for them, but now, 3 more appeared. Each one possessed a formidable aura. Was this really Earth? When did the powerful become so worthless? Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight exchanged a glance, not even caring about their stolen weapons as they dashed towards the street at breakneck speed. With no chance of seizing the Infinity Stones, they could only retreat, report the situation to their master, Thanos, and reunite with the other alien generals who had descended on New York. "Want to escape?" The 4 women of the Destiny Alliance laughed. In the next instant, Wonder Woman's golden lasso of truth, Lorna of Polaris's green magnetic energy, Spider-Woman's white webs, and Invisible Woman's blue shield all appeared on the street. Supernatural powers intertwined, a powerful aura overflowing. It was like a hellish level in a level-breaking game, filled with deadly bullets and traps, leaving no room for evasion. In less than 3 seconds, the battle was over. General Corvus Glaive and Proxima Midnight, 2 alien warriors under Thanos' command, were drenched in sticky spider silk and bound by the lasso of truth. A blue energy shield enveloped them, magnetically immobilizing them even in their armor, pinning them to the ground. "Miss Diana, ask them about Nian's whereabouts first," Spider-Woman hurriedly said. Invisible Woman nodded, also concerned for Nian's safety. Wonder Woman grasped one end of the lasso of truth, looked at the 2 men, their movements restrained, and asked, "Tell me, where's Nian?" The lasso of truth's magical power took effect. We don't even know Nian," General Corvus Glaive replied frustratedly. "Aren't you here to take the Infinity Stones?" Wonder Woman raised her brow and continued. Proxima Midnight was also extremely frustrated and helpless. "We were indeed sent by Thanos to seize the Infinity Stones. However, upon arriving on Earth, we only sensed the location of 2 stones. One was the Mind Stone, which was possessed by a green-haired human woman, and Proxima Midnight and I took. The other, the Time Stone, was possessed by a human man in the city, and was taken by other generals, Ebony Maw and Black Dwarf." The Time Stone? The members of the Destiny Alliance knew that the Time Stone wasn't with Nian, but with a sorcerer named Strange. So, they hadn't attacked Nian yet? Then where were Nian and Wanda? But then, Spider-Woman Gwen cried out in alarm, "Where's Lorna? Where's Lorna?" Wonder Woman and Invisible Woman immediately realized and looked around, only to discover that Lorna, who had been there just a moment ago, had disappeared. Even they hadn't realized when Lorna had vanished. Could it be? Wonder Woman Diana's beautiful eyes gleamed with wisdom. Only special abilities related to special properties could achieve this. Where is this place? Lorna looked around in surprise. She was still on the streets of New York, but everyone else had vanished, the world filled with a dead silence. Footsteps rang out behind her. Lorna instinctively turned her head, her beautiful eyes narrowing as she caught sight of a crimson figure. It was a petite girl with crimson hair and a red dress. "Sister." Lorna, overjoyed, took a few steps forward, then quickly stopped. She had noticed something. 2 silver necklaces dangled around her neck. One belonged to her sister, Wanda, while the other emanated special fluctuations, its original owner obvious. "What's wrong with him?" Lorna asked nervously. "He's fine. He's waiting for me to come home, so I need to get back as soon as possible." Wanda smiled knowingly and replied crisply. "Sister, what do you want to do?" Lorna sensed something was amiss with Wanda. "Lorna." Wanda looked up at her. "You said before that you envied me. Because at least I had parents, a twin brother, and could live in the young master's house sorely. But, actually, I envy you even more. I'm jealous of you." As Wanda spoke, a crimson hue flashed across her eyes, overflowing like a spring. A dark crimson surged from her petite dress-wrapped form. A sizzle. Crimson exploded into the sky. Most of the New York streets in the mirror dimension were filled with chaotic crimson magic. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Lorna's face was pale, and she nearly cried out at the sister she'd risked her life to protect. You can't give me what I want. But I heard that collecting all 6 infinity stones can grant all worldly wishes. Wanda was cold and ruthless at this moment. The crimson surged like a tide, enveloping Lorna in front of her. Outside New York, on the other side of the battlefield, Ebony Maw, dressed as an alien elder, stood upright in the air, his hands clasped behind his back, soaring at breakneck speed with his mind. Beside him stood a human man, held captive by steel and concrete. The human, draped in a blue cape, had fainted. It was none other than Dr. Strange. Black Dwarf, I've got it. Lead the men back to the ship and reunite with the Master's fleet. Ebony Maw telekinetically addressed another alien commander. Then, Ebony Maw frowned. Behind him, a young man swung by spiderwebs and a gold and red Iron Man were hot on their heels. Catch up, and make sure you rescue that wizard. Iron Man Tony Stark declared gravely. Mr. Stark, I'll do my best. Spider-Man Peter Parker responded hastily. Human ants. Ebony Maw sneered. With a wave of his hand, the facades of buildings on both sides of the street peeled back, carrying a whistling gust of wind that, fueled by his mind, swept over the pursuing Avengers. Iron Man and Spider-Man could only dodge. The enemy was too powerful. His mind could control everything on the street. Every movement was a miniature natural disaster. Ebony Maw showed no interest in fighting and, carrying the captured Doctor Strange, flew towards the donut-shaped spaceship. But to Ebony Maw's dismay, up on the open hatch, there was no sign of his companion, Black Dwarf. Instead, a human girl in a red dress stood there. Get out of my way. Ebony Maw's eyes glazed, and with a shout, his invisible yet powerful mind surged outward. Even without manipulating anything, a powerful enough mind could easily stun an enemy. But the next moment, a look of disbelief crossed Ebony Maw's aged face. Before his mind could reach the enemy, it gradually vanished. He could clearly see a crimson stream, like blood, seeping out of space. Then, feeling himself drift, Ebony Maw watched an old body, along with its gentleman's suit, disintegrate and disappear in the crimson before him. Ebony Maw, one of Thanos' generals, suddenly realized that he was dead. He was dead the moment he saw the other party. Chapter 421 Thanos. Betting on Infinity Stones. Dozens of light years from Earth, in the boundless expanse of space, surrounded by a dozen gray-silver ring-shaped spaceships, a space battleship, moving at a steady pace, like a giant meteorite, a symbol of destruction and death, steadily approached Earth. This space battleship, over 10,000 meters long and wide, was a true behemoth. The ring-shaped spaceships, compared to it, seemed like mature children. The battleship moved through space, forming an ominous gray-black nebula. Within the command room of this space battleship, a 2-meter-tall alien leader sat astride a suspended metal chair. He was clad in gleaming golden armor, regal and imposing. Half of his resolute face, revealed beneath his helmet, was purple. In his right hand, he wielded a long, double-edged sword, while in his left, he wore a strange metal glove. The glove had 6 holes reserved for inlays, and 2 of them were already set with gems. One shimmered purple, the other shimmered yellow. If Nian were present, he would definitely recognize them. Aren't these the Power and Soul Stones? Thanos, leader of the alien army and a Titan, looked down at the gems glowing orange on his left infinity gauntlet. A trace of sadness and nostalgia flashed in his eyes. But quickly, these weak emotions vanished, replaced by determination, decisiveness, and coldness. For the Soul Stone, he even sacrificed his beloved adopted daughter, Gamora. Thanos had no way out. I will be able to do it soon. Gather all 6 Infinity Stones, kill half of all life in the universe, and offer them to that great being. Thanos' mind conjured up a vision of a woman wrapped in a black gauze dress. The goddess of death? Thanos' purple face revealed a hint of fanaticism and admiration. However, what surprised Thanos was that before he left for Earth, that person had actually mentioned to him a human. A human named Nian Prince. It was clear that the Supreme Being was paying close attention to her. This puzzled Thanos, yet also filled with deep resentment. How could a mere human have caught the eye of that person? I wonder if the Vanguard commanders I sent out successfully retrieved the Infinity Stones, Thanos thought to himself, unconcerned. Whether they succeeded or not was irrelevant. After all, he was already here. Thanos' majestic and powerful frame emanated an aura of dominance. I am invincible. He was the proud overlord of the starry sky, a descendant of the most powerful race, the Titans. Nothing could stop him. Moreover, Thanos had now successfully crafted the Infinity Gauntlet and possessed the Soul and Power Stones. The only thing Thanos regretted was that the Space Stone wasn't in Asgard. Otherwise, he wouldn't have needed a warship and could have reached Earth directly through teleportation. According to that person, the Space Stone is with that human boy named Nian. Thanos' eyes flashed with an icy coldness. He hadn't told the Vanguard commander this, so that he could deal with him personally. But then, a spark lit up in the empty, deserted room. The spark spun into a wheel, quickly forming a 2-meter-tall portal with a rustling sound. This sudden sight caused Thanos to rise from his chair, weapon in hand. Under his stern, cold gaze, a human girl in a tiny dress emerged from the portal, her small boots clacking against a cold metal floor. "Who are you?" Thanos asked coldly, his pupils shrinking again. Around the red-haired girl's snow-white neck hung 4 nearly identical silver necklaces. As the girl moved gracefully, the 4 silver necklaces swayed, and the pendants clashed with each other, creating a crisp, melodious sound. Red, blue, yellow, and green. The pendants shone with a different, dreamy hue, interweaving into a rainbow of light. "You." Thanos' eyes widened. After countless years of planning, he recognized them instantly: the Reality Stone, the Space Stone, the Mind Stone, and the Time Stone. These were the remaining recesses in his Infinity Gauntlet, and the ultimate goal of his trip to Earth. He'd assumed it would take some time to search and collect them all. Thanos hadn't expected the remaining gems to arrive aboard the warship before he even reached Earth. No way. Thanos' eyes darkened. Clearly, the other party was also collecting the Infinity Stones. The hunter, they hunted? Ho ha ho ha. Instead of being startled, Thanos burst into laughter, a wild, chilling laugh. He gripped his double-edged sword and Infinity Gauntlet tighter and tighter, a crackling sound echoing through his joints. For years, every civilization in the universe had trembled at the mere mention of his dominance. And now, a single human girl had taken the initiative to attack him? Furthermore, they each possessed 2 and 4 stones, respectively. This meant the future of the entire universe depended on this matter. Come on, let's stake everything on this, to see who will have the last laugh. Thanos' laughter faded, and he slammed his sword against the floor, a dull thud. Immediately, from the entrance to the colossal battleship's control room, countless black shadows emerged. There were alien soldiers wielding energy guns, ferocious alien monsters, and powerful aliens wielding sharp weapons. They all rushed towards the petite, frail figure of a young girl in the center of the control room. Thanos would not let down his guard just because the opponent was a human girl. Even a lion swoops down on a rabbit with all its might. Siege? Conspiracy? Family affection? All are false, only true victory is real. To achieve this ultimate victory, Thanos will stop at nothing. Facing the shouting, charging soldiers of Thanos' army, Scarlet Wanda stood still. Suddenly, she raised her fair hands, and crimson overflowed from fantasy into reality, like a torrent of blood seeping outward from space. Hiss. This crimson, illusory, yet both real and unreal, spread outward from Wanda's center, covering half of the battleship's control room. Energy lasers, extraordinary physiques, rare gold blades, evil thoughts. All the attacks and soldiers of Thanos' army were instantly annihilated and disintegrated by the crimson wash, turning them into nothingness, leaving not even ash. No attack could harm Wanda, no soldier could reach her. Die? At this moment, a tall, domineering figure forced its way into the crimson, casting a shadow over the girl at the center. A long sword, gleaming with cold light, tore through the air, slashing straight at the girl's seemingly fragile form. No general or soldier on the battleship would question whether this blow could cut the girl in half. Bang! The crimson surged, and the battleship trembled. Thanos' eyes widened, the longsword in his right hand hovering above the girl's head. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red ribbons, like flowing molten lava, like tentacles of a multiverse monster, tightly wrapped around the long sword's sharp edge. No further movement was possible. Chapter 422 Thanos' Snap of Fingers. Swish. The scarlet webbing tightly entwined the blade, rendering even the Titan's strength unable to cut it. Meanwhile, Thanos felt the crimson surrounding him from all sides, corroding and disintegrating his custom-made blade and metal armor. Wanda stood before him, her once clear eyes darkening crimson, her body radiating a crimson hue. A crimson powerful enough to shatter all matter into chaos. Thanos didn't hesitate. The Infinity Gauntlet, once clenched in his left hand, suddenly erupted with a bewitching, powerful purple beam. This violet beam injected into Thanos' body, instantly exploding his already potent energy aura several times over. Not just energy, but also strength and power. Infinite stamina and boundless energy. This was the limitless power of the Power Stone. This stone had been lost to the outer reaches of the universe for eons, passing through countless civilizations. Each one that possessed it reached the pinnacle of the universe, only to be swiftly annihilated along with its host planet. This was due primarily to the fact that the stone possessed the power to detonate a star, and secondly, to the fact that individual beings simply could not harness its power. Even Thanos, a Titan, didn't dare to wield his power with his bare hands. However, through the Infinity Gauntlet, he could command a portion of its power at will. Empowered by the Power Stone's power, Thanos' eyes flashed purple, his blade freed from the scarlet webbing, continuing his furious slash. Buzz! A necklace worn by Wanda flashed blue, and a blue mist of light quickly teleported her away. Thanos' blade slashed against the command room floor, a burst of purple energy radiating outwards. The floor ripped apart like paper, carving a kilometer-deep gash within the battleship. Countless legionnaires aboard were reduced to ash by the single blow. But Thanos cared little. He knew his opponent's strength. The outcome was bound to be decided between the two. Whoever lost would lose their life and the stone, whoever won would control the future of the universe. Whoosh! A blue mist emerged behind Thanos. A delicate, white hand reached out and slapped Thanos on the back. Thanos shuddered. The force of that slap was so weak, so small it could be ignored, yet he felt a surge of power that disregarded his armor and his physical defenses, piercing deep within him. Buzz! The Infinity Gauntlet, clenched in Thanos' left hand, emanated a warm orange glow, influencing his body and counteracting the force. That was a close call. Thanos shuddered. If it weren't for the Soul Stone, that slap would have knocked his soul out of his body. But it was over. Thanos suddenly spun, his double-edged sword spinning like a rapidly rotating propeller, carrying the might and whirlwind of the Power Stone as it slashed horizontally behind him. This was his strongest strike. And his fastest. At this distance, with the Power Stone's power, Thanos was confident he could sever everything in space. Bang! The purple sword light and the crimson tide collided fiercely. In the moment of confrontation, the battleship control room where Thanos and Wanda were, was the first to collapse under the pressure. Rumble. Inside the massive spaceship, rooms, equipment, weapons, and even the Legion, huge swathes of it were annihilated and crumbled. Finally, the entire vessel began to crumble and disintegrate. The wreckage of the ship and its Legion drifted through space. Atop one of the remaining floor fragments, Thanos stood, clutching a chipped double-edged sword. His purple face paled, and the Infinity Gauntlet on his left hand slowly loosened, the brilliance of the gemstone abruptly dimming. Then, a smile rose in Thanos' mouth. He was certain he had truly slain the enemy. In that instant, the enemy hadn't even had time to use the Space Stone or a portal before falling under his blade. I won this battle. Thanos was incredibly lucky. He possessed the Power Stone, the most powerful gem for boosting combat power. Otherwise, without the stone's power, he might have truly lost. This also demonstrated the enemy's formidable power. After all his years roaming the universe, Thanos had never encountered such a formidable being. Wait? Thanos suddenly opened his eyes wide, but there was nothing left before him. Even if the opponent's body was reduced to ash by the Power Stone's might, the 4 Infinity Stones should remain. Oh, Thanos suddenly realized, the opponent possessed more than just the Space Stone. However, because the opponent lacked the Infinity Gauntlet, he had never believed that he could wield the powers of multiple stones simultaneously. But now, the girl's figure suddenly materialized behind Thanos. This was the power of the Reality Stone, capable of transforming illusions into reality. Glowing green gears whirled behind the girl. This was the power of the Time Stone, capable of rewinding time and restoring its peak state. Thanos instinctively tried to grasp the Infinity Gauntlet and unleash the power of both stones, but he was restrained by the blue spatial energy, his left hand unable to move at all. Under the suppression of the yellow Mind Stone, even his thoughts froze. The 4 silver necklaces adorning the girl glowed brightly. This is impossible. I must be the destiny. Thanos was filled with grief and indignation, overcome by despair, knowing he had been utterly defeated. Wanda's eyes were cold and ruthless. She stretched her fair hands outward, and a crimson erupted across the universe, instantly cracking Thanos' armor. Then, Thanos' tall, sturdy purple form exploded beneath the crimson. Not even his soul remained, only a glove. Amidst the silent wreckage of the spaceship, the dressed girl untied 4 necklaces, extracted the gems from each, and set them into the golden glove. Space, time, power, mind, soul, reality. 6 infinity stones, set into the infinity gauntlet. Instantly streams of colorful light flowed across the gauntlet. The dressed girl embraced the infinity gauntlet and, with a wave of her hand, a portal formed beside it. In the surrounding universe, besides the crumbling main ship, there were a dozen other ring-shaped spaceships. The remaining generals and soldiers aboard these spaceships watched helplessly as the dressed girl departed with the infinity gauntlet. As the portal vanished into the universe, their strength drained from their bodies as they collapsed to the ground. Thanos, the supreme overlord of the universe, was defeated and dead? That was Thanos. Thanos. None of the survivors of Thanos' army could accept this scene, this fact. Once this news spread beyond the Milky Way, it would be enough to shock the entire Milky Way. Once it spread beyond the stars, it would be enough to shock the entire interstellar universe. No one would believe that Thanos would die like this, without even entering the interior of the Earth. No one knew. After just tearing the Overlord Thanos apart with her bare hands and obtaining the Infinity Gauntlet with all 6 gems, the human girl stepped through the portal and appeared above a small town shrouded in a curtain of light. The moment she passed through the curtain of light in the small town, the human girl's body grew and developed rapidly, turning into a beautiful and elegant crimson young woman, with a rounded curve on her flat belly, and a gentle smile on her cold face. Wanda landed in front of the door of a wooden house in the small town, and even her voice softened, calling out happily, "Nian, I'm back." Chapter 423 The Only Hope, Nian. At the edge of the universe, apocalypse. On the surface of this artificial planet, crafted with cutting-edge technology, countless engine-like craters spewed upwards, scorching the starless sky a gruesome crimson. The wreckage of a Kryptonian spaceship lay beside one of the craters, billowing thick smoke. Within the cabin, no sign of life remained. Despite this, 20 or 30 terrifying beings still guarded the area. Whoosh! More burly, purple-blue demonoids spread their wings, sweeping across the near-Earth air, their ferocious fangs making a terrifying rattling sound. Meanwhile, within one of the craters, a bat-like figure dangled from a steel cable inside an engine, next to a cyborg, almost one with the crater's blazing walls. The cyborg's right hand transformed into several plug-in cables that sank into the crater's inner wall, preventing the crater from emitting actual flames. Advanced projection technology simulated the formation of engine flames. Thus, even flying overhead, the demonoid army failed to detect the two hiding there. But that was all. Batman and Cyborg's expressions were grave, inevitably tinged with a hint of dejection and despair. As if Apocalypse had anticipated their invasion, they had set a massive trap through Apocalypse. Once they entered Apocalypse, they would be surrounded and slaughtered by a legion of half-demon, half-doomsday soldiers. Only then did the Justice League learn that during Steppenwolf's invasion, he had retrieved remnants of Doomsday's genetic sequence from Metropolis. Yes, it was the Kryptonian monster that had once killed Superman, Doomsday. The Apocalyptian civilization had infused Doomsday's genetic sequence into half-demons, cultivating a terrifying army that was invincible throughout the universe. While these legionnaires weren't as powerful as Doomsday, they still possessed 1/10 the strength of the nascent Doomsday, far exceeding the upper limits of the original half-demon race. Most importantly, these half-demon, half-doomsday soldiers were nearly limitless, operating under the command and control of their mastermind, Darkseid. They were an apocalyptian force born purely for battle and slaughter. Facing this monstrous horde, even Superman and Supergirl, the sons of Krypton, were unable to withstand it. As for Martian Manhunter, for some reason, he's been in poor condition ever since entering. As a result, the Justice League team, having just arrived on Apocalypse, was instantly dispersed by the surging monster army before even catching sight of Darkseid, the leader of Apocalypse. "Bruce, what do we do now?" Cyborg glanced at Batman beside him. Despite his unrivaled knowledge, it was clear that Batman was the sole leader of the Justice League. After entering Apocalypse, Even their personal communications were blocked and disconnected, making it impossible to contact the other members. What do you think? Batman's eyes, deep within his mask, questioned Cyborg's opinion. I think we need to reunite with the other members first, Cyborg replied, taking a deep breath. But then, a deafening roar of anger erupted from outside. This roar, a physical sound wave, echoed throughout Apocalypse. Then, the sounds of intense combat echoed from kilometers away. It's Superman. Cyborg's eyes flashed with surprise and worry, and he quickly glanced at Batman. We must rush to reinforce him. With that, Cyborg attempted to activate his engines and fly out of the crater. But just then, Batman placed a hand on Cyborg's shoulder, slightly lowering his mechanical body. Bruce. Cyborg's only intact right eye flickered with confusion. You saw just now, Superman and Supergirl combined can't suppress the Apocalypse Legion, Batman said. Besides, I'm afraid all the half-demons and half-doomsdays on Apocalypse are converging on him now. With their combined strength, we can't help at all. Without waiting for Batman to finish, Cyborg's mechanical body trembled. Of course I know this. Even if the two of us rush over to support, the chance of victory is only 0.0002%. But if we don't go, aren't we just waiting for Superman to die in battle? Rather than dying here separately, it's better to die together. Cyborg said excitedly. He had already deduced from the strength of both sides that the Justice League's plan had clearly failed utterly, and even the chances of any members surviving were slim to none. Batman shook his head and said gravely, "Who says we're doomed? Is there still a chance we can win?" Cyborg's electronic left eye flashed red, staring intently at Batman. "If we go to support Superman now, we're doomed. But if we seize this opportunity Superman has fought for..." Batman's eyes darkened as he recalled the flash of what looked like the Flash 3 years ago, during Superman's resurrection. Nian, that's the key. Nian Prince, that's the key. Batman Bruce Wayne muttered to himself. Nian Prince. Cyborg looked at Batman in surprise, confused by his sudden mention of the human boy who had died 3 years earlier. Besides, this is Apocalypse, and the Kryptonian spaceship has been destroyed. There's no way back to Earth. Let's go. He's our only hope. Now we have no choice but to trust him. Batman said, triggering his Batclaw. His dark cape fluttered, and he rushed out of the crater. Cyborg quickly started his own engine to follow. Meanwhile, in Westview, Wanda opened the door and returned home to see her husband sitting on the sofa. He wasn't wearing a suit jacket or even a tie, and his shirt was a little disheveled. What's wrong? Did the interview go badly? Wanda changed into her house shoes and walked slowly over to her husband. The dark-haired young man was lost in thought, his eyes filled with confusion, as if he were lost in thought. Only then did he catch sight of the gorgeous crimson figure. Only then did Nian come to his senses. He reached out and pulled Wanda into his arms, burying his face in her swollen, round belly. Wanda smiled gently, her hand resting on Nian's head, smoothing his messy hair. Wanda, I'm a little confused, Nian said. It's okay, I'm back, and I won't leave your side again. Wanda smiled gently, but her eyes flashed a violent scarlet, noticing that some unknown outsiders had come to the town. Kill all those who disturb their lives, just like cleaning up the garbage at home. Look, I bought you a pair of gloves, you can use them when you go out to work in the future. Wanda took out a pair of leather gloves from her handbag and handed them over like a treasure. The gloves were made of smooth cowhide, but on them, there were 6 patterns that looked like gems. Thank you. Nian put on the gloves and found that they fit perfectly, as if they were tailor-made for him. As long as you like it. Wanda was very happy, her eyes curved into a sparkling crescent shape, and she smiled slightly and said, Nian, this is also my birthday gift to you in advance, you can make your birthday wish now. Chapter 424, Nian and Wanda, the final chapter of The Witch. Birthday wish. Yes, you can make any birthday wish you want, and I think every birthday wish will come true this time. That's just kidding, Nian laughed. No way. Wanda shook her head and said firmly, I promise, this time it's real. Nian looked down at the leather gloves on her hands and suddenly asked, Why, Wanda, why didn't you make a wish? Of course. I want to make a wish, too. Wanda looked at him gently and said matter-of-factly, but I want you to make your wish come true more than mine. Besides, it's your birthday, Wanda smiled. Nian was silent. He looked at the leather gloves on his hands, and as he slowly clenched them, he felt a subtle illusion. As if making a wish would inevitably come true. If it were you, what would you wish for? Nian raised his eyes and looked at his wife, Wanda. Wanda smiled gently and said, "As for me, I just want to live with you forever." Nian blinked. "Really? Any wish can come true. If I make a wish, can it be a girl?" Wanda blushed and gave him a sullen look before pouting her rosy lips. Of course. The couple's daily banter was familiar, filling the room with a warm atmosphere. "Then, I'll make a wish." Nian took a breath and clenched his leather-gloved left hand into a fist. The next moment, he clenched his thumb and middle finger, gathering strength, and instinctively snapped his fingers. Nian's words and gestures stopped abruptly. His clenched left fist unclenched, and he raised his bright eyes and said, "Wanda, I want you to be the real you again." "What?" Wanda's smile faltered. The beautiful and elegant crimson young woman forced a smile and said, "Isn't this the real me now?" Nian shook his head gently. "I want you to be Wanda again, free of disguise, free of psychological burdens, able to live a truly happy life. The real, authentic Wanda." At that moment, the vast light curtain enveloping Westview Town trembled and shook. Some of the houses within suddenly shifted between modern and older architecture. Many residents watched in confusion. Inside, Wanda's face paled, her smile vanishing, and her body trembled slightly. "When did you discover this?" "Just now." Nian's eyes were bright and complex. Just now, because of Harley Quinn, he recalled memories of another life. A life called Nian Prince. He was Wonder Woman's adopted son, the master of the metamorphosis, the second-generation supreme sorcerer, the apostle of death, the creator of the future era, the silver god, and the founder of the Destiny Alliance. "Wanda," Nian was about to say. Wanda stepped back, leaving his embrace, tears streaming from her beautiful eyes. "You said, let me go back to my old self. Back to that crimson maid, that girl who couldn't grow up, who could never be the object of your love. Back to that person who couldn't hug or kiss you, who could only watch you from afar." Wanda's tears streamed down her face, causing Nian's heart to ache. He tried to embrace her, but she retreated from his arms. "If this is your wish, your command, then it shall be as you wish, my young master." Wanda laughed bitterly, and in that instant, happiness, future, contentment, everything vanished from her. She was back to that girl who seemed to have everything, yet in reality, had nothing. Buzz! An unstoppable chaotic crimson flowed from Wanda's body. Wherever the crimson passed, the old-fashioned objects in the room returned to their modern appearance. Wanda's belly flattened, and her figure transformed from a mature woman into a petite young woman. "Wanda, listen to me." Nian's eyes welled up in his youthful appearance. For the past 6 months, everything around him, including the town, might have been an illusion, but the emotions he'd poured into it were definitely not. But Wanda could no longer hear him. Wanda's mind collapsed, filling with a chaotic dark crimson. Her body floated upward, and a chaotic crimson surged from within, like a dark witch. With a swish, the crimson tide swept through, disintegrating everything in the house, including the wooden chairs, lamps, iron, and television. "Wanda." Nian tried to wake the out-of-control Wanda. His spider sense could sense this power, enough to easily destroy everything in the town. Furthermore, if Wanda lost control enough, she herself would be consumed by the crimson. That's right. Nian looked down at the glove on his left hand. The leather glove had returned to its original appearance, now inlaid with 6 gemstones. With all 6 infinity stones, the infinity gauntlet could grant any wish. Now, we have no choice but to rely on this. No matter the consequences, we must bring Wanda back. Nian instinctively raised his left hand. As he tightened his grip on the metal gauntlet, his thumb and middle finger pinched together, and colorful lightning swirled across the infinity gauntlet. Zzzz. Just as Nian was about to snap his fingers, a buzz. The yellow mind gem on the infinity gauntlet glowed, piercing the space between Nian's brows. Mage. Nian cried out in shock, stopping his snap. He looked back at the mind gem embedded in the gauntlet. It looked just like the other gems, nothing out of the ordinary. It was as if it had just been an illusion. No, he had clearly seen the mage, the ancient one. He calmed himself down by controlling his emotions and looked forward to Wanda. The crimson girl, her eyes closed, her petite body floating half a meter above the ground. More and more chaos crimson flowed out of her control, consuming the entire 2-story wooden house. Wait, this is... Xinian's eyes widened as he suddenly realized something. He looked at the girl before him and spoke firmly. Wanda, you're still conscious, right? After all, I'm not hurt at all. Nian said forcefully. At that moment, the uncontrolled chaotic crimson had completely obliterated the house, but it didn't harm Nian, who was standing so close. Not even the shirt he was wearing disintegrated. Wanda closed her eyes, unresponsive to his words as the crimson continued to burst forth. You're still conscious, right? You just don't want to accept reality, Nian continued. For example, you're actually the younger sister, the youngest of 3 siblings. It's just that you wanted to be the older sister who protected them, so you forced Pietro to call you sister, and tricked Lorna into mistaking you for sister. At this point, Nian's words caused Wanda's eyelashes to flutter slightly. For example, you wanted to grow into a beautiful woman, but you're stuck at a Lolita. For example, you wanted to get pregnant, but your belly is actually very flat. For example, you really wanted a family like this, but I destroyed it. Nian spoke solemnly. Wanda in front of him still had her eyes closed, tears streaming down her delicate face. Yes, that's reality. But, what does it matter? Nian ignored the scarlet and took a step forward. Whether you're a younger sister or an older sister, you're Wanda, the one who wants to protect her family the most. Whether you're a beautiful woman or a little Lolita, I actually love both. Even if you don't get pregnant, there will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Nian took another step forward. Our home is indeed destroyed, but we still have a real home. The most important thing is... Nian finally approached Wanda. He opened his arms and hugged the girl, who was stained with the terrifying scarlet. You are my maid, my wife. We were together in the past, we are together now, and we will be together in the future. Holding the girl's body tightly, Nian lowered his head and kissed the scarlet. To others, the scarlet was enough to annihilate everything, even the Overlord could not resist. To Nian, it was a tenderness specially given to him by a witch. The witch was laid out very early, and it is much more difficult to conquer her than the others. This also shows my love for Wanda. If you like the witch, you can give a like in the character column. If you have a monthly ticket, you can give one to support this book. Chapter 425, Trap? Ancient One and Thanos. Inside Westview Town, a 2-story wooden house was shattered by the uncontrolled crimson chaos. In the center of the cold crimson, a young man in a suit and a crimson-dressed girl embraced each other. Wanda's fluttering eyelashes suddenly fluttered open, and she looked at Nian's face so close to her. The two of them had an unparalleled rapport and familiarity, clearly the result of 6 months of hard work. Just as Nian had said, the things in this town, even the town itself, might be illusory, but the feelings and experiences were real. In this town, where past and future do not exist, a man named Nian and a woman named Wanda truly married, supporting each other and living a happy life together. Perhaps after this, the present Westview will cease to exist. But the story of Nian and Wanda will continue, a fantasy that will be replayed in reality, even more exciting and fuller. Most importantly, it must be real. Wanda's hands suddenly reached up, hugging Nian's neck and back, handing him over to her for his medium. The crimson eyes of the crimson girl, once brimming with tears, regained their clarity. The crimson that had swept across the rest of the town receded like a tide. It was unknown how long it took before the two finally stopped. Fool, Wanda leaned against Nian, her eyes crimson and her pouting lips a rosy red. Master, I lied to you and blocked your memory. After all, I was the one who made the mistake first. I deserve it, Nian said with a smile. He recalled many things from the past and realized that his negligence towards Wanda had led her to lose herself. You said it wouldn't matter if I didn't grow up, didn't you? Wanda whispered. Of course, no matter what you look like, you're still Wanda. Nian stroked her crimson hair, feeling a wave of fear. He had almost lost Wanda. Then if I grow up, you won't chase me away. Wanda continued. Who said I was going to chase you away? Nian was startled by the words, suddenly remembering. That was 3 years ago. Nian, worried about Wanda, had wasted her life as a maid in the prince household, so he'd said something similar. At the time, Nian had said that when Wanda grew up, he'd give her freedom to do whatever she wanted. Nian was thinking of Wanda, but he hadn't anticipated that statement would stick with Wanda to this day, and she'd become terrified of growing up, because if she didn't, she could stay forever. Idiot. Nian was furious and distressed. He lowered his head, looking at the flustered and confused Wanda. "Do you think I want you to leave?" He trembled with anger, gnashing his teeth as he said, "Forget it, none of that matters. Just remember this, whether you grow up or not, you must stay by my side. Be prepared to live with me forever. Even if you want to leave, I have no intention of letting you go." Nian felt like he'd shot himself in the foot. Yes, what the Ancient One had said was right. He was the only one who could change Wanda. "I understand, Master." A smile returned to Wanda's face. "Oh, right. Wanda, this is..." Nian released Wanda and looked at the metal glove on his left hand, studded with 6 gems. "I stole these gems in the glove from someone else." Wanda's face tinged with guilt. She had acquired the 6 gems and the Infinity Gauntlet solely to fulfill her own wish, and now that wish had been fulfilled, these Infinity Stones and the Gauntlet meant nothing to Wanda anymore. "It's okay. I'll apologize to them later," Nian said with a strange smile. "Besides, you indirectly saved the world. Destroying the cosmic overlord that threatened to descend on Earth was a feat worthy of being called a savior." Wanda hurriedly said, "I'll restore this town and its inhabitants to their original state. No hurry. Before that, I need to finish something." Nian, his hair turning crimson, suddenly raised his right hand. A surge of crimson surged across his palm, then descended onto the Infinity Gauntlet on his left hand. "Young Master." Wanda's eyes widened, confused by Nian's reasoning. Nian's Chaos Crimson, even more perfectly controlled than Wanda's, focused its energy and charged towards the orange gem embedded in the Infinity Gauntlet. It was the Soul Gem. Crack. Under the wash of Chaos Crimson, the Soul Gem began to crack. Nian Prince. "I won't give up." Suddenly, a massive purple figure emerged from within the Soul Gem, emitting a deep, hoarse cry. But under the wash of Chaos Crimson, the cry, the energy, the glove, the gem, all shattered. When Nian ceased his Chaos Crimson, the glove on his left hand was gone, leaving only the 5 gems, blue of space, red of reality, yellow of soul, green of time, and purple of power, floating in the air. "Master, what was that just now?" Wanda was startled, seeing a clue. Nian spoke slowly. "The overlord you killed, Thanos, before dying, he imbued his soul in the Soul Stone and the Gauntlet. His soul had been in contact with the Soul Stone for 3 years, so he knew it possessed similar power." Nian, still apprehensive, said, "If just now, either you or I had used the Infinity Gauntlet to snap our fingers, it wouldn't have fulfilled our wishes, but the other's ambitions. A being like this, a dominant force in the universe, a being at the pinnacle of civilization, possessed not only formidable strength but also unparalleled cunning and tactics. Furthermore, he was ruthless to himself. Before dying, he even used his soul to set a trap." "Thank goodness you noticed," Wanda exclaimed in surprise. "Actually, I didn't notice at first," Nian exhaled. "Just now, when I tried to stop you, I almost snapped my fingers. But, at the very moment I was about to snap, someone stopped me." "Who?" Wanda was confused. She hadn't noticed anyone approaching. Nian remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floating yellow gem. He could now confirm that it was the Ancient One. More precisely, it was a thought left by the Ancient One on the Mind Stone. Nian recalled that 3 years ago, the Ancient One had borrowed the Mind Stone from him. It was probably at that time that the Ancient One had left a thought on the Mind Stone. When a situation like today occurs, the thought left on the Mind Stone will be triggered, giving a reminder at the critical moment. "Master, have you foreseen this day coming?" Nian wondered for no apparent reason. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.